Your job ahead of them. Any insight or perspective on what those crews are doing now? Because when we came back to you, we saw and you told us they were pulling off of the roof. They were kind of pulling back from the fire because of the danger. What are those crews doing now? Can you tell?
There's not much they can do, right? Those are engine trucks with very limited capabilities to fight this kind of a fire. Now you need to bring in the big boys, which are on the way. There are multiple resources making their way over here. Again, all of this is happening in real time. They are rushing ladder trucks from across this part of the city to get ladders up and start shooting water into the roof of this building. We don't see that happening yet. It's all happening in real time. It's going to take several more minutes for units to arrive here. I think what they thought was a situation that was manageable has now become incredibly unmanageable until those resources are in place. So right now, the firefighters who were here are now evacuating while new crews come in with those ladder pipes to get a fresh stream of water, likely multiple streams of water on the roof of this building. I can also tell you that multiple hazmat teams have been dispatched to this location. Also, you can imagine air quality, as we continue to hammer home here, is going to be a big issue. Air quality experts will be on their way out here to make sure that the air is still safe, and if it's not, then they will have to start issuing evacuation orders in this general area. Thankfully, much of this area is industrial, but there's a large chunk of it that's not. In fact, if you look just north of that building, it's a densely populated residential neighborhood. Then you have the 5 freeway, and then you have a whole other set of houses. And so the air quality here, depending on the winds and depending on what those readings tell them, may potentially require a preliminary evacuation warning or an evacuation order, something we'll keep an eye out for. But if you live anywhere near this area, don't assume that the air is safe. Bring your pets inside, close your windows and doors. This is obviously a combustible situation with a very, very dark plume of smoke like that. You can only imagine what is fueling it. Between the building materials, the freon, the gas, like I said, and whatever other chemicals may be involved in this logistics warehouse are now burning up and creating a plume of smoke that is just highly unusual to see in a densely populated area like this.
Absolutely, Chris. And we're talking about the dramatic images. We know that a huge swath of our community can see the smoke. Our LAX camera, we just saw the images from there. We have our viewers in Long Beach. They can also see the smoke from this fire. So we know that a lot of people are wondering what is going on near downtown Los Angeles. We are going to stay on this fire. We're going to be streaming this after our newscast ends when we go to World News Tonight with David Muir. You just stay with us. We are going to stay following this story because you can see this is a very big story that's happening right now. Chris, I wanted to take a look at one other thing on the side. When I saw that the fire was kind of marching toward the end of the building, I thought, where else can this fire go? It looked as if maybe an amber went below and there's a fire below. It just seems like this whole fire is just taking on a whole life of its own in that one building.
Yeah, you know, I don't know what kind of, because it's a warehouse, it's not like a typical house where you have like an A-frame attic, but there are internals in the roof. There's all kinds of plumbing and pipage, and often in these types of buildings. And so even if the inside of the building wasn't affected by fire originally, it certainly is now, but the fire is spreading within the actual structure of the roof, and whatever plumbing is carrying this fire into other parts of the building. As I mentioned, they were putting out the fire on the edge of the building, as you saw, Colleen, when the fireball came from a separate part of the building, more towards the middle of the building, and then that whole quadrant went up in flames really in a matter of minutes. To give you a scale of the time, the fire department here has been on scene for about 55 or 60 minutes. But it wasn't until about minute 45 when this thing blew up and took on a whole another profile. And now you can see they are dealing with an entirely different emergency that's going to affect a lot of people. It is highly visible. I'm even getting a little bit of a headache, and we're actually pulling away to protect ourselves, because this is a plume of smoke you do not want to mess with.
Absolutely. For our viewers now, you are streaming with us, our streaming viewers here on ABC7 on our streaming sources. For this coverage of this fire in Boyle Heights, our viewers on ABC7, they've since gone on to World News Tonight. But Chris, again, we've seen now multiple angles and views of the smoke seen from miles away. Our Long Beach camera, our LAX camera. The latest update from LA City firefighters that I think we can confirm that you've kind of depicted. They are transitioning into this defensive mode. All units we have confirmed they were called off the roof, out of the interior, and now kind of sorting out next steps to attempt to get this thing under control. For viewers who are just joining us, worth reiterating that this all started what appeared to be, Chris, a fire with solar panels on top of this cold storage facility in the Boyle Heights area just off the 5 freeway. It appeared to be out and then just exploded. And now it is taking over the entire building. And again, the entire facility, from what you know, has been evacuated. Is that correct?
That's what they said on the radio. LA City Fire was pretty confident that the few people who were in this building, it didn't sound like a lot, although we don't have any numbers, but they did feel pretty confident as of about 40 minutes ago that the building had been evacuated. They had done their internal search and cleared the building, and as far as they were told by employees in the building, that the building was indeed empty. That is the assumption at this point, and with that knowledge, they will not put many more firefighters inside this building. So it'll really come down to the ladder pipes to get water on this fire. Right now there's only one, and you can see that water is barely even making it over the structure. So this is not a promising sign. This is not a good situation by any means. This is a fire that is burning out of control. What started as a patch of the building then spread to about a quarter of the building, and just in the last 5 or 10 minutes is consuming another quarter of the building. The fire is racing towards the south side of the building, almost like you would expect a wildfire to spread, guys. That's what it reminds me of. The way it's racing towards this. Look at it. Just look at this picture right here, guys. There's some HVAC units and some other equipment right there on the roof of the building. They were nowhere near this fire just a few minutes ago, and now fire is brushing up right against that equipment there, and within a few more minutes, it's going to continue to race towards the south edge of this building. There is a lot of building left to burn, and what we don't know, what we don't have really clear intelligence about is what is inside this building aside from the things you would expect. Right? I mean, this is a cold storage facility. It is the Lineage Logistics Company. They have several locations across the city of LA where they store cold goods and food, a lot of frozen foods. What does it require to keep those foods cold? Obviously, lots of Freon, lots of other chemicals in this equipment to keep buildings of this size cold and to keep the food cold from spoiling, right?
Yeah.
And that is what this building does. That's what it is built to do, and that requires a lot of technology that is clearly very, very flammable.
And I just keep looking at these solar panels, Chris, because this is unlike anything I have ever seen. And you are right, it does mimic a wildfire marching through, you know, all the brush. But I'm so curious on how firefighters manage this, because it's not as though you can turn a switch off. These solar panels, they are on at all times. When the sun is up, they are really working. They're like a workhorse here. So of course, this company seemed to be doing it all right, doing all the solar, because you need so much power to keep things refrigerated, and a huge warehouse of refrigerated goods. It's incredible. So you did say it, Chris. You said that they were going to have to bring out different types of ladders and different types of firefighting methods, but it just seems like this is a very challenging one. It's not as though, it doesn't seem like they would bring in any sort of air support for this.
You know, well, you know what? Honestly, I wouldn't rule anything out in this situation. This is not a normal warehouse fire. They may very well bring in air resources. I would not be surprised. Now, they are asking for assistance from LA County Fire. For LA City to ask for assistance from the county for a structure fire gives you an idea of the scale here. So now LA County Fire is sending resources to help out with the city, just to give you an idea. Additionally, you bring up the fact that this is a massive amount of solar panels that receive the energy from the sun. Then you've got to store that energy in batteries, right? You need generators and storage capacity to store that energy, and a lot of times that involves lithium. And lithium ion burns very, very hot. And that could very well be yet another element of what we're watching burn here. It is something that is a known risk with renewable energy, and this is a building fire that is now covered from end to end in solar panels. And those solar panels, again, are burning up, but what's below those solar panels? What technology is below those solar panels inside of that roof to keep that building cold and to keep the energy flowing into this building under normal circumstances is what is of real hazmat concern here. And that is why they are bringing in hazmat teams. And again, that is why I am very concerned about the air quality in East LA.
Well, one thing to point out, obviously, we see the solar panels. We saw that from the very start. And, one would assume when you see that the fire started with those panels. But that, of course, has not been confirmed, whether it was some type of a wiring, because we do know that fire with solar panels, this type of thing, incredibly rare. So, of course, that would be part of the investigation. That being said, we have word now from LAFD that because of the heavy smoke, a shelter in place has in fact been issued for the immediate area. Look here, if you live in the area, because we have established there are some homes not far from this warehouse. There are residential areas. The area in purple there, part of the shelter in place. This has just been issued by LA City Fire. You may be able to see your street names in that area. If you're not home, you have someone who is, you want to let them know of this shelter in place. I mean, better yet, you're thinking you live there, you look outside, you see this smoke plume, or just get out, right? You're so close, and certainly not a healthy situation.
I'm thinking, Chris, you live in this area, you see this cast of shade that just suddenly goes over your property, and you're like, what is going on outside? And also, Chris, we can talk about this more. We see that there's a shelter in place. You're already talking about you feeling the effects of this. I'm thinking a lot of people have masks because of COVID. Maybe put a mask on as well, because it is a warm day, and we are going to have, Chris, I'm going to bring Danny Romero in our conversation as well. Danny, I'm thinking people should put their masks on, because right now this is some toxic fumes that are hanging over.
It's one of those things, right? Better be safe than sorry kind of thing, because that, in general, again, we don't know the specifics of this facility, but we mentioned that, Chris had mentioned about it's a refrigeration kind of place. In refrigeration, they tend to use like ammonia. They tend to use carbon dioxide. Both can be pretty toxic when they're burning. So that's certainly going to be impactful as far as the air quality is concerned. But as we've mentioned before, in areas where, like, brush fire stuff, we talk about wearing masks, stay indoors, close up the windows, like just block all that outside air from you. And you're right, Colleen, too. That shadow that smoke casts is so widespread. If you feel that shadow around you, if you're in that shadow, you're in a danger area. Just take all the precautions you can, because the weather conditions, not really strong winds, but we can see it doesn't take much to spread that smoke around at all.
It does even appear to be laying down a little bit more compared to 15 minutes ago.
Exactly.
And that being said, for those homes in that area, when the smoke lays down like that, although the flames may be a bit away, you kind of feel the heat moving your way.
Yeah, that is part of that smoke plume, is the heat of that fire is being transported as well. Now, somewhat dissipating, of course, as it spreads out, but just the same, you're gonna, hopefully not, inhale that possibly toxic plume.
I'm thinking about people who, right now is the time that you're with your family, you're thinking about making dinner, you're trying, your windows are open, you're just, this is one of those beautiful days. You got to close them up. I'm thinking, not, put a scarf around your face, put a towel around. You've got to not breathe in.
Treat it like we've seen before in other fire zones, where whatever you can do because you don't want to inhale that stuff, because you just don't know exactly what's in there. But like I said, there are those ingredients that tend to show up in refrigeration, the ammonia, the carbon dioxide, that certainly you don't want to be inhaling that in that kind of instance.
Chris, let me bring you back in. From what we've seen in the past with fires like this, I can't imagine a situation where this building doesn't just fully collapse in.
I think this building is a complete loss, Mark. I think the chances of salvaging even part of the building is minimal at this point. Whether they can actually get firefighters in there, I really don't think they're going to do that. to what extent the sprinkler system is operating inside the building. That could potentially help things, at least in terms of, cordoning this fire off between the firewalls that are built into this warehouse potentially and the sprinkler system. Maybe that will have some effect on the west side of the building, but the entire east side of the building has already caught on flames, and the middle of the building appears to be a barrier. So there very well may be a firewall down the middle of the building, but still, with the fire spreading the way it is and through the roof and the way it's been behaving just in the short time we've been here, I think it's unpredictable, and I think it's highly unlikely that this building is going to be saved. But in the meantime, I want to give everybody a little bit of perspective here to where the smoke is spreading, because you guys said it. When we first got here, this was a plume of smoke, black smoke, that was billowing directly up into the air, and now it's laying down. The breeze is playing a role. There is weather here to contend with as that air starts to shift towards the east. We're talking about Montebello. We're talking about City Terrace. We're talking about parts of Boyle Heights. Everything from Boyle Heights over to the 710 freeway. We've been talking about the 5 freeway, but now look at the 710 along the right side of your screen. Right there, if you want to push in on that, Josh, you can kind of show that now the 710, which is nowhere near this fire, is now it's in the shadow of this smoke plume. It looks like a large thunderstorm cloud. That's what it looks like. And if you're driving now anywhere near the 5 freeway and the 710 freeway, you are driving through darkness. I mean, look at this. This is incredible, guys. The amount of real estate that is consumed by this potentially toxic air is quite concerning, and that is why they have issued that shelter-in-place warning. But this is a really, really tough situation for first responders. It's a tough situation for city managers. This is going to be a long haul.
Yeah, it certainly is, Chris. And you're talking, that was just so unusual to see the darkness. It's 3:42 in the afternoon, and you saw the freeway under darkness. But I'm also curious, I know Danny mentioned it a while ago. I wonder if they will start having to detour cars from going into this area, because these are some serious toxic, air plumes that are getting into the air right now. And a lot of people are not knowing what they're driving into, where I'm sure they're thinking, what is going on, right, when they start to head towards this dark plume. But have you heard anything that there's any sort of detours or anything for cars? Because of course, right now, you are in commute hours for Los Angeles.
Right, no, not yet. As of right now, the 5 freeway and the 710 are open. However, traffic has come to a halt. So this is already affecting the rush hour traffic. Traffic through East LA, specifically on the eastbound side of the 5 and the southbound side of the 710 freeway. For some reason, those two directions are the most heavily impacted by this fire. Southbound 710 and the eastbound side of the 5 freeway. Despite that, though, I wouldn't want to be on the north side of the 710, and I wouldn't want to be on the westbound side of the 5 freeway with the situation that they're dealing with here. So if your travels include East LA, by all means, stay off of the 5 near the 710 and the 60 freeway to the north, which would normally be the best alternative, and it will jam up eventually, is on the north perimeter of that smoke plume. So a giant swath of East LA and Montebello is consumed now by this plume.
Oh, my goodness. I know Mark and I are looking at this right now, but, Mark, there's so many people who are looking at this right now thinking, what is going on?
Absolutely. From what started as that very small fire that, again, we thought was out, and then it erupted. And then you mentioned all the different areas because of where this is located that is going to see the smoke billowing up in the distance. We've seen it as far away as the LAX camera, the Long Beach camera. And as Chris was just mentioning, now all of the freeways in that downtown area that converge into the interchange around this location, that you shut down one, or at least you slow down one freeway, it kind of becomes a trickle effect where multiple freeways are going to be impacted here. And Chris, a moment ago, you brought up a really good point from what you were able to see about what appears to be maybe a firewall within this building, because it looks like, at least for the moment, that fire has kind of stopped middle midway down the building. It's almost segmented on that northeast corner of the building, if that's correct. It hasn't gone much further, like there must be a firewall preventing, but maybe just now beginning to break through.
Yeah, well, you know, for a while there, it was really confined to like an exact quadrant, I should say. That northeast quarter of the building was consumed by flames, and the other solar panels were basically intact. It did break through and started to shift towards the south. We showed you those HVAC units and that refrigeration equipment on the roof of the building there. Those are now going up in flames. So the fire continuing to spread, regardless of any firewalls on the east side of the building. It is spreading rapidly towards the south end of the building, and within a few minutes, that entire east half of the building will be consumed by flames. As you point out, though, and as we come around the west side of the building, there is a very defined line down the center of the building, right above the logo, the Lineage logo on the left-hand side of your screen. You can see is basically cutting off the fire between left and right, between east and west. That's the east side of the building on the right, west side of the building to the left. And as you just pointed out, there are now solar panels very close to the original solar panels that were on fire in the early minutes of this fire. That is where it started, and they were able to put it out. But there is still fire in those solar panels that is spreading on the west side of the building. Now, the fireball came from inside the building, and I think that would be the west side of that that line of symmetry, if you will, that potential firewall that is keeping the fire to the right, to the east side of the building. It so far does not appear to be inside the west part of the building, but that could change any minute. As far as we could tell from up here, the fire, the flames, and the smoke are being driven by the wind outside, and then we can only imagine inside what is fueling this fire and in what direction. That southeast quadrant is not going to be spared. It's approaching the edge right now, but the southwest quadrant, this is obviously some office space on the you know, near the lobby of this building, and then you have the entire west half of the building. At this point, it remains intact. In fact, they are shooting water on the salvageable side of the building, if you will. They have several pipes. I count 1, 2, 3 streams of ladder pipes, at least 3 streams, just putting water on the part of the building that hasn't been affected yet. If they can cool down those solar panels and cool down the roof, maybe they could prevent the fire from spreading along the roof in this direction. Again, that's without knowing what's happening inside the building. That fire has not reared its ugly head on this side of the building. Right now, all of the fire, again, on the east side of that line of symmetry, right down the center of the building, there are 8 sections of solar panels that are completely intact on this side of the building. So if the strategy is to cool down the roof and cool down those solar panels, they're doing a great job, right? Because they're getting water on this side of the building. What you don't see yet is anywhere near enough water on the actual fire. The active firefight that they are setting up for is still in its infancy as they try and battle this major emergency.
Yeah, you can see the firefighters working so hard. Chris, also, we are getting a warning from the LA City Emergency Management. They're saying shelter in place. The LAFD, Los Angeles Fire Department, shelter in place order due to the hazardous materials in Boyle Heights. They say get inside in caps immediately and close all windows and doors, turn off air conditioning, heating, bring all people and pets to an inside room until you receive more instructions. And we are talking about it, Chris. You were talking about all bets are off on how they're going to fight this fire. They are calling in air support resources to help in this firefight.
That's right. You called it, Colleen, and sure enough, I said I would not rule anything out, and no sooner than that, they have now dispatched 2 city fire helicopters to drop water on this fire. Really going to be a remarkable sight, something we don't see very often for a structure fire. But again, this is not a normal structure fire, and so they are bringing in 2 additional helicopters to help fight this fire to whatever capacity they could, likely just dropping water, I would imagine, and seeing if there's any way possible of making an impact and also salvaging what's left of this building to prevent the situation from getting even worse. Thank goodness it is not more windy. I mean, if we were dealing with a windy day, I shudder to think of what we'd be dealing with here, because, I mean, there would be so much more exposure risk with a fire like this. And again, it is marching towards the south edge of this building. The entire east half of this building is going to be a complete loss as that roof eventually gives way.
Absolutely. For our viewers right now streaming with us, live pictures on the left in the smaller screen, the video on the right. You saw how quickly that happened when that fire exploded, the fireball emerging from inside the building. Up until that point, it appeared that the fire was only on the roof of this structure with those solar panels. Going back to Danny Romero, Chris talking about the lack of winds again. Yeah. Thank goodness.
Again, we're in that great transition from that really hot, kind of windy weather we had, but certainly the hot, dry conditions, to now today, we're right in that East LA area. We're looking at temperatures right around mid-70s, so nothing really hot. The winds right now we're seeing are, breezy at best. Maybe the occasional gust to maybe 10, 12 miles per hour, but still the sustained winds are breezy, 5, 6, 7 miles per hour. So the winds are not a major factor. That's certainly very, very good news in terms of quickly spreading these clouds of what could very well be toxic fumes. But certainly there's enough in there to move it along. And of course, as we talked about many, many times, fire creates its own little, weather zone. So it's kind of whipping up, winds within itself there. But as far as the conditions around it, the ambient conditions, we're looking at maybe 10, 11 mile per hour gusts occasionally, but the temperature right in that mid 70s range. And now here in the, approaching 4 o'clock, we're getting actually kind of the high temps of the day are starting to drop down now. So we're not quite as hot, like say a couple of hours ago, and we're just only heading towards cooler and also more moist conditions as that marine layer really makes its presence felt in those late night, early morning kind of conditions. Right now, we start feeling some of that, just barely, that sea breeze is barely starting to reach into the inland spots once again for its overnight effect as it usually has.
So on that note, that being said, of course, it is nearly summer. It's still warm here in Southern California. People want to run their air conditioner, and Colleen just mentioned this. So this is good if you are in this immediate shelter-in-place area. This is important. So let's repeat. The word from LAFD is to turn off your air conditioning. That can't be an easy scenario, but that is the recommendation because of the air that can funnel then back inside your house.
Right. I mean, the good thing is that our temps, a couple of days ago, boy, you want that AC on because it's 90 degrees outside. But right now, especially in that area, like I said, we're like mid to upper 70s, like 75, 77 degrees. So nothing really, really hot where you need that AC. So just, I mean, the most important thing is just to shut that down. Like the authorities say, shut it down. Don't let that outside air, because that's kind of how AC works, kind of pulls in that outside air. So don't let that happen. Just close that down. You'll be fine. Things will not get exceedingly hot in most, well-insulated buildings.
I'm feeling sorry for the drivers who don't have air conditioning.
Yeah, because you want to drive with your windows down. Don't do that there.
Don't do that. You got to close them up, even if you're having any issues. We're just learning.
And get through the area.
Yeah, that the LAPD, they have been put on tactical alerts. So meaning that if they're about to get off their shift, they're going to probably be asked to stay on. They're going to do maximum reinforcements to help this area because this is such a huge area. They're going to have to take care of a lot of the residents who are really concerned about what is going on in their neighborhood.
They can't go anywhere.
They can't go anywhere, Danny. I mean, it's a tough one to see because I feel for them. And not everybody's mobile. Not everybody has cars. A lot of people, get around by their relatives. So this is an area that they are definitely in the shadow of this massive cloud. And Mark, you said it as well. If you cover fires and that fire kind of comes around you, you feel an instant heat. And so this is such a concerning fire to be watching from Air 7. For
those homes that you see right there beyond the fire, now the smoke kind of billowing over some of them. We do want to let our streaming viewers know right now, 3:54, we're about 5 minutes away from Eyewitness News at 4 p.m. on ABC7. David Ono and Giovanna Lara will be joining us for that coverage. So very shortly, we are going to switch over and hand over to them for our next hour of coverage. Certainly a situation that I think we did not expect to quite literally explode. When we first went to this around 3:15, so 40 minutes ago, the fire impacting about 100 of the solar panels on this cold storage unit in the Boyle Heights area. We really thought the fire was essentially out before it exploded into that fireball. And Chris, before we leave you here from this hour of streaming, we've seen the 710 freeway and that impact. What about the 5? If we can go back to the 5 freeway, of course, a main artery, so many people use that. Any insight how that has developed in regards to traffic?
So it's kind of paralleling the 5 and is drifting towards the 710. In fact, we showed you earlier where it was just barely reaching the 710 freeway. And now, as Josh widens out, you can see it has passed the 710 freeway. Look at the neighborhood to the east. That's Montebello on the east side of the 710 freeway. That smoke is spreading with the wind. Go ahead and show them those flags on the southwest corner. You can see whatever wind behavior there is here is picking up indeed. As you can see near the front of those building, near the front of that building, are some flags that are whipping in the breeze down there as this onshore flow continues from west to east, blowing the smoke now laterally, laying it down on top of this entire community. So just in the hour or so we've been over this, it has really changed behavior. Both the wind and the smoke have really taken on a different profile as it continues to drift towards the east and affect even more people on the east side of the 710 freeway. You mentioned definitely roll your windows up. A good time to remind folks, if you happen to be hearing us from the car, a lot of people forget there's a recycle air button inside your driver, it's on your dashboard. There is a recycle air button. You do not want to be breathing the outside air. If you have the air conditioning on, you're going to suck this toxic air inside of your vehicle. It's not going to be comfortable. The best way to do that, go ahead, hit that recycling air button and get that outside air, keep that outside air outside of your vehicle and just purify the air inside your car. But right now you can see the southbound side of the 710 really stacking up here. For whatever reason, the northbound side is lighter, but that's basically going with the flow and what you would expect at this time of day during rush hour. You can see the plume is breaking up a little bit. It's not as continuous as it was. It's not blowing with the same ferociousness that we saw earlier, but still a very large plume nonetheless that is continuing to spread.
Yeah. Chris, this is David Ona now. We're transitioning to Eyewitness News at 4 o'clock, and we can't stress enough how toxic this smoke is. Stand by. We need to fade to black. Oh, okay. I'm getting told that we are, I think, going to do a cut-in for, live to the top of the show. Okay. Thanks, Mark. Okay. We will fade to black in just a second, but we're going to, when we come back for Eyewitness News at 4 o'clock, we're going to talk about the toxins that are in that smoke, how this started, and then what lies ahead in this firefight that has grown exponentially in the last few minutes. Stay with us just for a few seconds. We'll be right back.
We begin with breaking news, a massive fire in Boyle Heights. I'm Giovanna Lotta.
I'm David Ona. This is a live picture of the burning storage facility. What you're seeing is solar panels on the roof that have caught fire, sending thick plumes of smoke into the air that can be seen 4 miles. And we have live team coverage. We want to first begin with Chris Christie, live in Air 7, who has been watching this. And Chris, this almost started as what seemed to be an innocuous fire, and then it has now exploded to this really big problem.
That's a great point, David. It started off as a roof fire with solar panels on top. Firefighters were on the roof of this large cold storage facility here in Boyle Heights, putting out the fire, and they were making good progress on that fire. This fire has been burning for over an hour and 20 minutes, and for the first 45 minutes, it really seemed like a manageable situation. And then out of nowhere, a giant fireball exploded through the center of the building behind the backs of those firefighters, catching everybody off guard here, and the roof of that building started to buckle, and that's when we started to see a plume of enormous proportions blanketing parts of East LA, shooting straight into the sky, and now in the last several minutes blowing from west to east, enveloping a large section of East LA, the 5 freeway, the 710 in the path of the smoke. As you can see, they've called in numerous ladder trucks to pipe in water onto the roof of this building, and now several firefighting helicopters are on the way out here. 3 helicopters altogether have been dispatched. 2 of them will be dropping water and trying to make an impact on this fire. It's the Lineage Storage Facility. It's a cold storage company that stores frozen foods and cold goods, and as you would imagine, it takes a lot of chemicals, a lot of ammonia, freon, all kinds of other chemicals to keep these refrigeration units flowing. And obviously, you've got a whole roof of solar panels that require battery storage as well, a lot of lithium ion and all kinds of materials that are going up in flames and producing very thick, black, toxic smoke here in East LA. It is impacting traffic. The onlooker delays are incredible, both on the 710 freeway and the 5 freeway, and there is now a shelter and order place for this part of East LA. If you see or smell the smoke, if the sunny skies have been obscured by this, what would almost seem like a storm cloud, but it's not a storm cloud at all, you are urged to stay in place, roll up your windows, close your doors, and try and protect yourself. Whether you have a mask, perhaps you have an N95, that would be great. If you are in your car, definitely keep your windows rolled up, recycle the internal air inside your car. You do not want to breathe this in, but this is a large fire continuing to spread, and unfortunately, at this point, we're only talking about half the building. If they can confine this fire to the right half of the building, that would be a success at this point. But there's a whole other half of this building that has not gone up in flames. Presumably, there is a firewall preventing that fire from spreading to the west part of the building. So to the extent that they can salvage part of the building, you can bet they're going to try. In fact, they've been pouring a lot of water on the unaffected part of the building to try and cool down those solar panels and moisten the roof of the west side of the building. The right side, though, is a complete loss as this building goes up in flames. Guys?
All right, Chris, let me go over with some of our research now. We're getting some details on the hazards involved with these solar panels that are on fire. First of all, it says heavy metals will be thrown into the air like lead, cadmium, and arsenic. Hazardous gases are created as well, like sulfur dioxide, hydrogen fluoride, hydrogen cyanide, carbon monoxide, silica dust. Basically, when silica dust vaporizes, it turns to this crystalline silica. It could create dangerous respiratory hazards similar to asbestos or severe lung silicosis. So these are the reasons why they're saying do not breathe the air and shelter in place. And Giovanna, you have more details on that.
In fact, we are getting word from the LAFD that people in the shelter-in-place areas should get inside immediately and close all windows and doors, turn off air conditioning, heating, bring all people and pets to an inside room until they receive more instructions. But for specific streets regarding that shelter-in-place, this is what you need to know. North of Hollabird Avenue, south of Golden State Freeway, east of Soto Street, and west of South Indiana Streets. Those are the areas, the zone boundaries, where the shelter-in-place is being told, to the people who live in those areas.
My concern, though, and we bring Chris Christie back into the conversation, it might have been an illusion, Chris, when you were showing the traffic through the smoke. Do you see traffic and people having to drive through this smoke right now? And I worry about those folks who have nowhere to go. They're stuck on a freeway or a street, and they're going to have to drive right through this.
Yeah, it's almost like a slight fog if you're over the 710 freeway. If you go ahead and pan over to the right, you can see the 710 coming towards us here. Traffic is stacking up. The area is definitely affected, although it's not the thickest plume like you were talking about earlier over the 5 freeway when the fire first started. It's more of a black haze. Still, though, that black haze is not safe to breathe in for all of the reasons that you listed. And you can see there certainly is a traffic jam on the south side of the 710 freeway that is sitting in this toxic smoke. It's crawling by. Traffic is moving, albeit very, very slowly. So it definitely is impacting the rush hour here. It looks like the freeway, as far as I could tell, is still open. That could change at some point Once they have a handle on this, air quality experts and hazmat teams may advise to close down the freeways. But right now, traffic is flowing very slowly. The 710 freeway appears to be open, as far as I know, and the 5 freeway appears to be open. When this fire first started, David and Giovanna, that thick black plume was blowing straight up into the air. The air was stagnant, and it was just going straight up into the atmosphere. But in the last half hour, there is a breeze that is coming on shore, and it is blowing now laterally from west to east, causing that black smoke to lay down. It may not look as threatening as it did at first, but in some ways it's even more threatening, because instead of shooting up into the atmosphere, all of that toxic all of those toxic particles are going to start settling in the neighborhood. This warehouse is in a heavily industrial area, but the footprint of this cloud is going to envelop a large portion of East LA and Montebello, much of which is very heavily and densely residential.
Chris, one quick question, and then we're going to go to Mark Cota-Robles, who knows more about this company and the building, but those solar panels that are burning, are there more panels burning right up there, or are available to burn? Is that all solar panels up there? Yes, it is. So this could get worse and
again,
worse.
We're talking about at this point, half the building, but if you look carefully to the right of that firefighter, that roof right there almost appears to be buckling already. It looks like, if it hasn't already, again, we can't see through the smoke, but it looks like that roof has partially caved in and is going to continue to do so. When we first came on the air, all of the solar panels in this picture right here were untouched about 10 minutes ago. And just in the last 5 or 10 minutes, that fire has marched its way through that final chunk of solar panels, and now there's just about 5 or 6 rows of solar panels between the firefighters on the edge of the building and the leading edge of that active fire that is, again, ripping towards the south edge of the building, where you have all of those loading docks and those bays on the bottom of your screen. This is the back half of the building, and now you can see that almost the entire east half of the building is a complete loss. What we're still observing, though, is that the fire is holding to this half of the building. If you pan over to the left a little bit, Josh, you can see the left, over to the left, you can see that that half right there is still intact, still untouched. It tells you that there is a firewall doing its job and containing this fire to only half of the building.
Let's hope that that holds. Chris Christie, thank you so much. Stand by. We want to check in with Mark Cota-Robles. We do know that this building is Lineage Storage Facility. Mark, what else can you tell us about this company?
Yeah, Giovanna, of course, we were on the air on Eyewitness News at 3 p.m. when this fire broke out. Again, it started with those solar panels, at least visually. That's what we thought before it then exploded into a larger fire. We immediately knew that this was a cold storage facility. Lineage is the company. Now we're kind of diving into the website, learning a little bit more about what they do and the scope of this facility. We can tell you this is the Los Palos Street location. This is not only a global company, guys. This company, they have multiple Southern California facilities and multiple facilities within this specific area of downtown Los Angeles, Boyle Heights. There are other buildings and facilities right in the immediate area. From above this photo, you can see the size of the building that we've seen from Air 7, 491,000 square feet, the size of this warehouse. They do talk about the proximity to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, working on the cold storage, and they do reference on the website this being used as a trade hub dealing with imports and exports. Photos from inside kind of detailing what it looks like. Of course, this is a small photo, but this is a packed facility dealing with the cold storage, multiple layers of items inside. The website saying they deal with food and beverage, also working on something known as blast freezing. All of this perhaps will be part of the investigation to determine, first of all, how did the fire start? Was it the solar panels, or was it something within the storage facility in the cold storage area, the blast freezing area, or was it anything inside that then allowed it to reignite when we saw that fireball then shoot from the roof about 15 to 20 minutes after we were overhead? A lot of logistics happening with this company, and of course the investigation now just beginning. But again, a massive facility, guys, nearly 500,000 square feet just off the 5 freeway. We'll send it back to you.
The electrical drain alone to keep that whole facility in cold storage, I could imagine that's the reason why they have so many solar panels up there to kind of cover that electrical need. And you mentioned, and you saw this during Eyewitness News at 3 o'clock mark, but I want to show our viewers some video that we've pulled. And this is what we're talking about when it comes to this seeing like a small fire at one time, but then it suddenly exploded. Now watch closely. You'll see a lot of smoke and some of the heat coming up through these solar panels, but there's the explosion. And it was from that moment on that this fire spread rapidly and that plume of smoke became enormous. And it has become what you see right now. The concern, obviously, is look at the progress that the fire has made, that video on the right-hand side to where it is on the left-hand side, and there are more solar panels on that rooftop that could potentially go up in flames, which could potentially make more toxic smoke for this community. So these are the concerns that we have right now, but the good news is there are more resources on the way, but they haven't arrived just yet when it comes to airdrops.
Yes, 2 water-dropping helicopters are being added. Again, they are making their way to this facility. But again, this building is a 491,000 square foot facility. There is still a lot more fuel to burn here. Hopefully, firefighters on the scene will be able to keep that fire from spreading. We want to check in with Chris Christie. He's been following this for a while. We're still waiting on those helicopters. Chris, any updates on the firefight that you can share?
Yeah, those fire helicopters are still, I believe they're a couple minutes away. They should be here momentarily. There are 3 of them that have been dispatched. 2 of them will be dropping water in just about a couple of minutes. One of the problems here is there's not easy access to refill once they drop those first water drops. They're going to have to go find water to get back over here. So it's not going to be, you know, a quick and easy process of rapid fire water drops. It's going to be 2, hopefully well-timed water drops on the right side of that building to dampen what's left in there. But again, it's, in fact, Josh, widen out just a little bit. They may be coming into the frame here down the 5 freeway any second now. You're going to see them coming over the East LA River, or the LA River rather, and coming down 6th Street. Anyways, you can see that fire still blowing from west to east, and right with the wind. Here comes LA City Fire right there. First, they're going to make a pass likely before they come and drop down to actually drop water. That actually is... that might be, that's the helico fire. So he's not going to drop. He's more of a recon helicopter, guys. And then behind him is going to be the 2 water dropping helicopters that will do the actual water drop. So we're going to see an unusual sight, to be sure, not unheard of, but an unusual occurrence where you call in air support for a structure fire in the middle of this very dense populated part of East LA. Again, this is the Lineage storage facility that this fire is taking place, and it is ripping across the roof of this building and unfortunately inside the building, which is how this all blew up. This all started with a solar panel section on the far north edge of the building, and then out of nowhere we saw a fireball erupt from inside the building in a completely different section of this warehouse, guys.
Yeah.
And Chris, any word on the employees who were in this building, or you know where they went, the evacuation process, anything on that?
So the chatter that we heard over the radio is LA City Fire was pretty confident within the first 20 or 30 minutes of this firefight that the entire building had been evacuated. When we arrived on the scene, there were firefighters on the roof of the building. They quickly evacuated when that fireball erupted, and the inside of that building, again, was cleared as far as they were aware, so this building was empty. Now, in the last several minutes, you can see that firefighters are back on the edge of this building, but they may very well be getting down here momentarily. In fact, there they are. They were just on the top section of the building. Now they have come back down, and they are making their way back towards that ladder.
Okay. We have some ground crew there as well. Let's take some video of that and what that view is. This is live, right, Nicolette? This is a live, no, not, this is video. I'm sorry, this is video on the ground, but you could see, first of all, how enormous this building is on the ground perspective, but also the hot flames and an unbelievable amount of smoke that it's putting out. That's from the ground level, and that smoke looking really ominous.
Yeah, and the wind blowing that tree, the tree palms there. We know that fires will create their own firestorms, so we're looking at that. It looks like a night video.
It does.
It's like
it's blocking out the sun. We will be bringing Dallas Raines in just a couple of minutes to talk about winds or potential winds and what's happening at this time of the day. But we are talking about what's sheltering in place. There are so many toxins potentially in the smoke. Now, this research is for what happens when a solar panel catches on fire. Now, we don't know the specific makeup of these solar panels, but from what we understand, heavy metals are involved, which means lead could be in the smoke, cadmium and arsenic, and gases as well, like sulfur dioxide, hydrogen fluoride, hydrogen cyanide, and carbon monoxide, as well as a number of other basically details that would be horrible to breathe in, and that's why we're taking this shelter-in-place seriously.
Right. LA Fire Department issuing a shelter-in-place order because of the hazardous materials or potentially hazardous materials that David just mentioned in Boyle Heights, and they are telling people in the area to get immediately inside, close all windows and doors, turn off air conditioning and heating, bring everyone in the family, including pets, inside the room until they receive further instructions. Hopefully people in their cars are doing the same thing. But for the details on that, on the specific streets involved in the shelter in place, this is what you need to know. It involves the area north of Holabird Avenue, south of Golden State Freeway, east of Soto Street, and west of South Indiana Street.
Right, so keep that in mind. That may change as well as this plume continues to grow, and we're going to keep you posted on that as we watch this firefight. But let's get back to the dangers involved in inhale. Oh, there's a drop. We are seeing our first drop. As you watch that, and we will go back to Chris in a second, let's go to Denise Denor, who joins us right now to talk about air quality. And Denise, this is not like a regular old fire. There are specific toxins within this smoke.
Absolutely. We're not exactly sure, but we know that there are dangerous chemicals in this fire. Right now, I am on the roof here of our studios in Glendale, but you can see that thick plume of black smoke right behind me. And if you live downwind of this fire, you want to keep your doors and your windows closed, like you've been saying. Run the AC and your air purifiers. If you're driving past this in your car, switch to recycled air. Now, early reports is that this storage facility may have some solar panels. So we're talking about plastics and polymers burning these types of materials. It produces carbon monoxide and thick toxic smoke. When exposed to extreme heat, these can break down into hazardous fluoride gases and vapors. So we're talking about dangerous stuff. A lot of vulnerable people out there, and these standard silicone panels use trace amounts of lead. This can vaporize into fine, hazardous lead oxide. I mean, we don't know exactly, but this is just generalized information of what could be in there. And we are all very aware of structure fires here in Los Angeles. We've been through a lot. We've seen cars burn. This is specific because it is a cold storage facility, and these types of fumes can be dangerous to everyone, even those who are healthy, but especially, again, to the vulnerable. These include people with asthma, coronary disease, people with pulmonary fibrosis. They have reduced lung function to begin with, and this particulate matter can go deep into their lungs, and it's hard to get rid of. So what does it do? It causes inflammation, and it causes irritation, and it causes coughing, and in worst case scenarios, it can land you in the emergency rooms. We've seen this over and over when we've had fires here in urban areas of the Los Angeles area. Now, air quality in the Boyle Heights area, when I checked a few minutes ago, it was still reading at moderate, but again, that could be changing very soon. So if you are downwind of this, again, shelter in place, run your air conditioner, do not open your windows, stay as safe as possible, and if you have to be walking outside, we are very familiar with N95 masks. So make sure you break those out and wear them, because again, we are not sure exactly of the toxic chemical makeup of this smoke, but we do know it's dangerous, and it can be dangerous to even healthy people. So reporting live here in Glendale, Denise Tudor, back to you, Giovanna and David in the studio.
All right, Denise, thank you. Now that we've told you what's in that smoke, the dangers of it, where's the smoke going? How strong are these winds going to be? Let's check in with Dallas Raines now with the update. Dallas?
Okay, David, it's a typical afternoon in Southern California. As far as the winds are concerned, they're coming out of the west and southwest down in that area, and that is blowing that smoke. which is very, very toxic. We're talking about lead and cadmium, and that is moving off to the east-northeast. So if you're viewing from that area of Southern California, that is the area that's most likely to be in the influence of this poisonous gas that we're seeing. Here's a current map showing the winds. As I mentioned, about 5 to 15 miles per hour in that area, but notice how they curl back toward the San Gabriel Mountain area. So anywhere from Pasadena all the way over through the foothill areas of the San Gabriel Valley could be under the influence of this smoke plume that we are watching very carefully this afternoon, and it continues. Remember, it is temperature-wise, we're okay. When you look at temperatures right now, about 79 degrees out there at Van Nuys, 75 downtown. So the temperature is really not to deal, nothing to really do with this situation, but it is very toxic smoke and is blowing off to the east and the northeast this afternoon.
All right,
Okay.
Dallas, thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
And we want to check in once again with Chris Christie. He continues to fly over this fire, and we saw those water-dropping helicopters. That's a great sight to see. Chris, what can you share?
Yeah, so we saw 2 water drops. LA City Fire dropping about 480 gallons with each of those drops right there in the center of the building. We saw a lot of that smoke turn white briefly, and now you can see towards the edge. You can actually look right down the middle of the building is where that water was dropped. But unfortunately, you've still got some solar panels on the west side of the building that are on fire. Again, they are setting up a helipad to bring in more water with those same helicopters, so they're going to continue to repeat the process here. They have grounded all of their drones temporarily to allow and make room for those helicopters. We're watching a rare urban water drop in the middle of East LA as they try and tackle this very large warehouse fire. The smoke, though, continuing to blow from west to east right across this part of Boyle Heights and East LA. Still, though, you could see a little bit of a thinner profile as you could see through the smoke, a lot different than what we were witnessing just about 20 or 30 minutes ago, but a very toxic cloud still, if you will, nonetheless. Guys?
Chris, I noticed when the helicopter pushed in, as it's doing now, that it seemed like the fire was creeping onto that next set of solar tiles. You know, seemingly like the fire is spreading. Is that accurate?
It's definitely spreading towards us inside the building, but we're talking mainly about the right half of the building. Inside the building, we believe there are firewalls that are keeping the fire on the right side, despite the fact that you've got a handful of solar panels on the left of that center line there that have been burning for a little while. It seems to be just the solar panels that are on fire. However, without any water on those flames, without any more water drops, that fire will continue to spread inside the roof. That may very well be how this fire spread into a different part of the building originally. And so I believe, to your point, Giovanna, once they have the ability, they will now focus on not necessarily the heart of the fire, the heart of the building, which is already basically a complete loss. I would say let's focus on that center line there and those solar panels that are kind of creeping to the west. That group of solar panels right there, which is very close to the original fire. If you see those solar panels towards the edge of the building there, that's where this fire started. That's where the fire and the firefighters originally were, on the roof of this building when we first pulled up. They were managing the fire to that little section of the roof. And then this turned into a completely different fire. Once the fire spread through the roof and the inside of the building, this fire erupted behind them on the east side, and that's why you see that entire half of the building up in flames. Still, though, it looks like the left side remains intact.
Well, we're getting a statement now from AQMD, which is very important in this situation, that they're aware of the fire and have deployed an inspector to the scene. Regarding air quality, we are actively reviewing particulate matter data from our regional air monitors as well as local air quality sensor networks. So, in other words, we hope to get more specific details of what could be in this smoke. In the meantime, The shelter in place for this community and this area has actually expanded a bit. So let's show you that map, and we'll try to give you as much info as we can. Obviously, Giovanna, the darkness, the smoke there is showing you where the fire is. But that whole area, the purple is the shelter in place, and the blue being the warning.
You could see that it is now up to the 101 freeway there to the top. Hard to see what the left edge of the shelter in place is, but this is the expanded shelter in place. The earlier shelter in place, we knew the streets, Holabird Avenue, Golden State Freeway to the south, east of Soto Street and west of South Indiana Street. But you can see that this new expanded shelter in place is larger. And now we're able to see some of the streets. Over to the right, it looks like Indiana Street to the right, and then over on the left, hard to see what that street is to the left, but we know it hits the 101 and then Garnet to the north. But these are streets that if you live in these areas, you are being asked to stay inside your home, turn off the air conditioning, turn off the heating, close your windows, bring your children and your pets inside, close the windows. Very important, because at this point we do not know what the hazardous materials are that are burning in these solar panels.
Okay, we just got some a notice from the county as well, so I'm just going to read this to our viewers. It says, due to building fire, use caution when outdoors in the area of East Los Angeles. This also includes the area east of Boyle Heights. If sensitive to health issues, go indoors. Close all doors, windows, limit outside activities, limit exposure to outdoor air. But you saw that map, and it's growing. People need to be sheltering in place. And we have some clarification, because we heard some notices that say turn the air conditioning off. Some say turn it on. In the past, we have told you to turn it on because it filters the air. But the official notice now is turn your air conditioner off. But if you have an air purifier, turn that on, okay? Air conditioning off, air purifier on, until we get further notice. And if you're in that danger zone, please do that.
Yeah.
Let's go to Chris Christie, back watching the airdrop. And Chris, let's be honest here. Are these making a difference?
They are making a difference, and as they continue to pound this fire, they'll make even more of a difference. And quite frankly, it's really the only thing that's going to make a difference. You could shoot water into this fire all night long. And by the way, they will be shooting fire into this building all night long. This is going to be an extended operation as those ladder pipes set up around the perimeter of the building. But in a building this size, with a fire this hot, this raging, I really, this is one of those times where you thank the Lord that we live in a city with such robust fire department, that they have these aerial resources to drop this amount of water on a building fire in the middle of such a densely populated neighborhood. So at 480 gallons per drop, those are going to have a pretty good effect. It's not going to have an immediate effect all at once, but drop by drop as they set up that helispot and continue to drop water on this fire. Originally they called in 2 helicopters. Now there's a total of 4 LA City fire helicopters tackling a warehouse fire in the middle of East LA. And I say it like that because this is a very rare situation that we are witnessing here. This does not happen all the time. This is a very unusual event and a very unusual fire that poses unusual risks, and it is quite valuable to have these air resources to make a difference when things that you would never even expect happen in such an urban landscape that we live in. And here comes another one, and just like that, they are going to start to pound these repeatedly. I first said it's going to take a while to set up the helispot and get the helicopters in order to start making repeated drops, and they're going to have to travel to refill up. Well, now we're witnessing almost one after another here, and it really is heroic work by these guys. I mean, they train for this stuff, but very rarely are they put in a position to fight a fire like this. This is very, very unusual what we're watching here.
We are grateful that they are here to do this job, right, and available. All right, Chris Christie, thank you so much. We have crews on the way on the ground, including Abigail Velez. She is on the 10 freeway heading east towards the fire. Abigail, I know you're moving, but what can you tell us?
Yeah, well, Giovanni, you can take a look. We're still 6 miles away from Boyle Heights, but you can see that thick cloud in the air. We see people around us that are taking videos with their phones. A lot of them seem to be confused as to what is happening. We see an LAPD helicopter heading towards that direction. A lot of people around me, though, again, are mystified by what they're seeing in the air right now. Another thing that is concerning is a lot of them have their windows down. We heard Denise talk about it. Y'all have touched on it as well, that there are some dangerous chemicals in the air with this active fire right now. So if anyone is listening, we definitely urge them to raise those windows up. Here inside of the ABC7 unit, we have our windows up. We're using recycled air as our air conditioner as we continue to look at this thick black cloud in the sky. And again, we're still 6 miles away, but even as we were further back, even as we were about 8 miles away, we could still see that hazy blackness in the air that had everyone very confused. In fact, we were in Culver City as far as there, and we could still see a hazy black overview in the sky. Right now, it's getting obviously more prominent as we head closer to Boyle Heights. Another point of concern is that we're still seeing these planes in the air that have these signs on them. We're still seeing them fly. I'm not sure how dangerous that may be for them, but it looks as though they are really riding in towards that black cloud. Again, a lot of people right now with their windows down, taking photos. Some people even seeing us in the ABC7 news truck, wondering if we know what's going on. I also do want to point out, as we head closer to Boyle Heights, we do have our masks ready. We want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, because we do know that there are some shelter in place and advisories in effect for people in the immediate area, and that should really point out and concern to you just how dangerous these chemicals are. But for now, as we approach closer to Boyle Heights, we're still about 5.5 miles away. That black cloud just continues to really cover the sky on top of us. I just want to give you a better view of what we're looking at right now. It's really heading right on top of our heads right now as we approach closer to the area, but it really is concerning, especially for drivers who have their windows down, people who may be outside not paying attention to what's going on. It's important that you tell your neighbor that this is an active fire with dangerous chemicals as those solar panels continue to burn. So be aware and be mindful of what is in the air right now, especially if you have respiratory issues. That is one thing that you definitely want to monitor. Further to the left of us, I can see an LAPD helicopter, I believe, also still in the air. So there's just a lot going on that we want to be aware of, especially as those chemicals are really out right now. But for now, it looks like a thick black cloud. All the drivers around us just looking up in the air, and it's important to know that we are approaching rush hour traffic, if not in it actively right now. So as we're already crawling on the 10, this gives another reason to have traffic barely getting by as onlookers and looky-loos are looking up in the air wondering what is going on. It is this active fire that we are over. This commercial building, a storage unit that we're looking at just actively burning as those solar panels continue to burn. We are expected to be in Boyle Heights again in 5.5 miles. And of course, I'll keep you updated. But for now, from the moment, I'll just be here.
Abigail, thank you. Thank you for that excellent report. And as you can see from watching the movement of Abigail's camera, the 10 freeway is very sluggish. We want to check in with Danny Romero for a traffic check. Several freeways affected with
this.
Yeah,
it is. So we got a great shot here of on traffic map. You can see where the smoke certainly is the fire zone itself. And as we've been showing the direction of that smoke, you can see right there the red on the 5 is just totally widespread there. You can just see that is just barely moving at all on that 5. So that area right there along that 5, that's someplace you want to avoid. And also as affected, because again, it's that same general areas right here on that 710 southbound, all red there. That's a very tough drive as well. The 60 might be an alternate route if you want to travel in that direction, but that too is starting to jam up right here. You can see that right around East 3rd Street and right around Rowan. That's going to start backing up as well. So just pretty much you want to avoid this area as best you can, because here along the 5, that pretty much is just a solid red all the way through up to the 710, and then that 710 itself all the way southbound down there, all the way up to the 60, also heavily impacted. So those spots right now, if you can absolutely avoid them, do that, because that fire zone is going to be active for the next few hours and then some. So again, that 5 right here along that eastbound side, that 710 on the southbound side, that 60, both east and west, those are going to be concern areas right now. Avoid those as best you can. It is just a tough drive, if even driving at all. And again, like Abigail mentioned, if you have to get out there, roll those windows up, turn off that AC. Yes, a tough drive, all the more reason not to go there. All right, David, Giovanna.
Good points, Danny. Yeah, this is going to be a long firefight, as you can see. If you've been watching this for any length of time, you can see they're a long way from getting this out, and it is spreading. In fact, that's a live picture from Air 7. As you see, more and more of these solar panels are catching on fire right now. And what is remarkable, during Eyewitness News at 3 o'clock, take a look at this video. This is when this fire seemingly was small on the roof, but you notice it's starting to catch fire on these panels, but just give it a few seconds here and then it explodes. From that explosion on, it spread rapidly and has been basically overrunning all of these solar panels. There's a lot more to go, but clearly this is burning extremely hot. It is out of control right now, and this whole building with the enormous amount of solar panels looks like it's going to go up, and that's the source of this huge plume of smoke, Giovanna, that is spreading throughout the area.
Yeah, David, and if you're just joining us, this fire started about 2:30, and this is happening at the 1400 South Los Palos block in Boyle Heights. And again, this storage facility is 491,000 square feet. It is huge. It is a lineage storage facility, a cold storage facility for imports and exports. It houses food and beverage and what we understand to be something called blast freezing. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at those solar panels above and so much toxic matter in that smoke, and we're not quite sure what is in that smoke. AQMD is sending a person to analyze the situation here, but we can tell you there is a shelter in place. We've been telling you about this for some time. We want to reiterate that it is important, if you live in these areas, to stay inside. The LA Fire Department warning to get inside immediately, close all windows and doors, turn off your air conditioning and heating, bring everyone in your family inside, including pets, until you receive further instructions. And for the details on that area of the shelter in place, these are the streets involved: north of Holabird Avenue, south of Golden State Freeway, east of Soto Street, and west of South Indiana Street. Now, there also is an advisory area beyond the shelter in place area where you are also being urged to be careful, stay inside, and monitor this fire and the situation. There you can see the map. The blue area is the advisory area. People in those areas are being told to use caution, stay indoors, and stay on top of the situation. And then the shelter in place is the purple triangle there, sort of to the left of that map.
Right. So to the left, all the way to the left or west is South Central, and then all the way to the right is Garfield Avenue. That's the whole area that they're really concerned about right now. And we have been talking about turn your air conditioner off, turn it on. In the past, we have told you to turn the air conditioning on because it has a filtration system. But Denise Dedore joins us right now, and why they're telling us to turn the air conditioner off. Denise?
Well, David and Giovanna, it is unusual. Of all the fire air quality stories I've done over the years, this is one of the first times that I've heard officials tell us to turn the air conditioning off. Obviously, that points to the toxicity of the fire and the dangerous fumes that it's emitting. They don't want any toxic fumes going in or out into the home. So they want you to run your air purifier, shut your windows, keep your windows and doors closed. So it is very unusual, which means this can be quite dangerous to your health. And that is one of the reasons why they're telling us to keep your air conditioners off. It is a cooler day, but it is something to bear with on a day like this. Now, I'll tell you where we are right now in proximity. You see this black smoke behind me. My photographer, Ryan Todd, and I have been looking at this. Now you can see that it's coming from the east to the west. We're at the 134 and the 5. And as it goes to the west, we see it as it rises higher going back east. So I know our Dallas Rains has been monitoring the winds, but we do see the smoke traveling to and from. We also have the 5 freeway going north and south right next to our studios. And we can tell you that there's definitely traffic, but there's also some rubbernecking happening. We see people slowing down, taking a look at what is going on in the sky because it is very black as they're heading south on the 5 freeway. Now, if you're driving past this in your car, switch to recycled air. Early reports say that this storage facility has solar panels on top. We see that, and so we know that there are some toxic polymers and plastics. Burning in these types of materials, it produces carbon monoxide and thick toxic smoke. When exposed to extreme heat, these can break down into hazardous fluoride gases and vapors. There's also standard silicone panels here and trace amounts of lead possibly in solar panels, which can vaporize into fine hazardous lead oxide. Now we have a statement also from the AQMD. They say they're aware of the fire. They've deployed an inspector to the scene. Regarding the air quality, they say they're actively reviewing particulate matter data from their regional air monitors, so we're still waiting to hear on that. They know that the Los Angeles Fire Department is the lead agency responding, and they're recommending that if you see or smell smoke, that you stay in place. Remain indoors with your doors and windows closed. Run an air purifier. Avoid using whole house fans or swamp coolers. That's advice that we always hear when there's structure fires. And for health impacts and recommendations on exposure to ammonia, we recommend that you reach out to the LA County Department of Health. Those are recommendations especially for people who are vulnerable, people who have asthma. So again, shelter in place. Do not run your air conditioner. Reporting live from Glendale, Denise Dodor, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Denise. I believe that we are going to a press conference right now. I'm not quite sure the details, but let's listen in.
Responding companies responded to 1,400 South Los Palos Street. This is a commercial area in Boyle Heights. And what they encountered was a very large 1,000 by 500 foot commercial building. Initial companies that arrived on scene reported fire through the roof on a portion of this roof. The Los Angeles Fire Department immediately went into an aggressive offensive stance in trying to mitigate this fire. We got companies that were going on the roof and companies that were going inside the building. It turns out that this is a very large cold storage facility with a field of solar panels on the roof. Again, this building is 1,000 by 500 feet in dimensions. Fire companies started making this aggressive attack. We did have fire that reached a ammonia line, and with that ammonia line, that ammonia started off-gassing. The incident commander then immediately asked all companies to pull from the inside of the building and pull off of the roof, and we went into a defensive posture. This off-gassing of ammonia was a very large, pressurized off-gas line, so the incident commander called for a shelter in place for the area because of the nature of ammonia. Now, this ammonia is not toxic to individuals unless they have respiratory issues or they're in direct contact with the ammonia. We asked that people shelter in place in order to avoid any contact with the product that was in the air. Simultaneously, the building itself and the adjacent structures, were evacuated. This is a coordinated evacuation for the street on Union, Pacific, and Los Palos to remove the individuals that were closest to the gas area and the building that was involved in this fire. The Los Angeles Police Department and a fire company with a rescue removed those individuals and put them into a safe location. Everyone else is safely sheltering in place. And advisories were made between Los Angeles Fire Department and LA County Fire Department, which were supported by our Emergency Management Department. Our defensive attack then led to a totally unique operation that the Los Angeles Fire Department decided to do, and that was the use of water dropping helicopters. Because the nature of this fire was solely on the roof involving these solar panels, and it was creeping along almost like a brush fire would in a topographical area with grass, we decided to use water dropping helicopters to stop the majority of this fire from spreading throughout this building. Those water drops have proven to be effective. Now, we've kept all firefighters off the top of this building and outside of this building. We have called for our LAFD robot that we could bring hand lines in to be able to get into the inside, to be able to assess the amount of extension and damage inside the building. All the valves were shut down in order to mitigate any additional off-gassing for ammonia. Any surrounding tanks have been cooled by LAFD hand lines. And this is a operation that's being supported by LA County Fire Department. So LAFD is the lead on this. We do have LA County Hazmat as well as our hazmat teams on scene. We're monitoring the air. We're monitoring the water runoff, and we're monitoring the air quality downrange where the air and smoke is flowing. Again, we don't anticipate any additional shelters in place. If you do have Genesis or watch duty, which we always recommend, or you have Notify LA, you may have received, if you're in this area, a shelter-in-place advisory. Our systems are working effectively. It's been a coordinated effort, again, between the Emergency Management Department and the Los Angeles Fire Department to be able to get our notifications out. Now, I've been in communication with the mayor throughout this incident. She's very well aware of what's happening and very pleased with the operations that are being taken place. I can tell you, this is a very unique situation because of the size of this building. Again, 1,000 by 500 foot dimension building is very challenging. Again, the fire is on the roof. It's involving the solar panels. So obviously there was an electrical concern. We had to shut down all power to this building. We had to shut down the valves to all of the various tanks, including the ammonia tanks. And we had to ensure that the off-gassing that had taken place was already complete and done before we started moving into other operations. I would anticipate a few more water drops from our helicopters, and then you'll probably see the ladder pipes go up. And then when we find that there's no compromise to the structure and we can actually get hand lines in place, you'll see firefighters going in and trying to mitigate this fire on a more offensive operation. I'm open to any questions you may have. Well, and that's a great question. And how challenging is it to fight these fires when we have solar panels? Solar panels on a building of this size, and if you were to look at it, if you've been following the media and you've been seeing it from the helicopter's perspective, it looks like a field of solar panels. The thing to remember is this: when solar panels are on a building, even though we shut down the solar panels and we shut down the power, the nature of a solar panel is it's still working to conduct electricity. So it's very dangerous for our firefighters. Our firefighters did an incredible job mitigating what they could initially offensively, but because of the challenges and they can't get in there and they cannot get into where that fire is actually burning, they had to pull back, and that's why we're using the uniqueness of using water dropping helicopters. Well, there is, and the batteries would be on the inside, and that's why we're hesitant yet to get in there with the lithium-ion batteries, but we do anticipate finding a bank of batteries on the inside, and all our firefighters are not only in full breathing protection, full firefighting protection, but some of them actually have been told and directed to put duct tape around anywhere where there may be skin contact, because that ammonia will cause irritation to the skin. Again, that's why we're asking people to shelter in place. And for those of you who are sheltering in place, what our recommendations are to you is this: shut your windows, close your doors, turn off your AC system. Although it may be uncomfortable, it's only going to be uncomfortable for a very short time. We are mitigating this. We do have a good, strong, prevailing wind. We're monitoring those wind conditions. We're monitoring where the smoke is going, and we're monitoring the air quality to ensure that the ammonia isn't going anywhere where we affect it. We know there's hospitals nearby. None of them are any danger, and nor are any of the residents. I can assure you of that. Sí, lo digo en español un momentito, nomás voy a contestar esta pregunta.
Earlier you had the ladder pipes with the heavy stream operations going. When was the decision made to actually use your aerial assets to assist with fighting the fire?
Initially, our fire companies went to the roof with hand lines. They realized the extent of the fire on that roof, and so they went into a ladder pipe operation. Now, ladder pipe operation flows anywhere, but depending on the tip, 1,500 to 2,000 gallons per minute. Things that our firefighters need to understand is what's compromised on this roof. Now, please understand, when our firefighters are very, very well educated in building construction. Firefighters in the United States study exactly how buildings are built, and then you have to think they study how they're built, but now they're under a state of demolition. That fire is actually compromising the state of that building. So they have to take that into consideration, and that's what our incident commander did. How long was the fire burning? What was it burning? What is the structure of this building made of? Is it tilt-up construction? Is it Robertson decking? Is it corrugated steel? All of that has to be brought into their decision making, and then those decisions are made and the operations then set forth.
Last time you guys have done water drops like this on a structure in the middle of, downtown.
I've been on this department for 31 years, and the last time I remember this happening was in Echo Park, where we had a very stubborn fire on a hillside. It was very difficult to get to, and we used water drops to knock down that fire so it wouldn't get into the brush and to the adjacent structures. And that was probably about 6 years ago. This is something I can tell you right now the fire service will be discussing, because it's not in most operations that anybody would consider this. I commend our incident commanders and the firefighters who are on scene for thinking out of the box and using the tools that they have available to be able to mitigate this emergency. Ya lo quieres en español? Okay. Now I'm going to say everything I just said in Spanish. Lo que pasó es a las 2:35.
All right, you've been listening to LA Fire Chief Jamie Moore giving us the details of this difficult firefight, explaining how they began with an aggressive attack. This is a 491,000 square foot building, huge, and they did begin with an aggressive attack. Then they discovered that there was an ammonia line that started off-gassing, and that is when they decided to pull their crews off the roof and from inside the building.
Yeah, and so a lot of complications going on with the solar panels. What we also learned is these panels, even though they turned them off, they still try to generate electricity, which he says is very dangerous for the firefighters. But let's look at the positive of what's happening here. During that press conference, you see a noticeable difference on the building. Less fire now, less smoke. Those water dropping helicopters, they're working. And the other thing that's working in their favor right now is the direction of the wind. You'll see the wind is trying to push the fire to our right, to your right if you're watching this. But you could see most of that has already burned. It's still spreading towards the left, but not as rapidly as if, let's say, hypothetically, the wind was blowing in the other direction. Those panels are still catching on fire. They're still very dangerous. The smoke is dangerous as well. But the positives of what we're seeing are starting to build as these water-dropping helicopters are doing their job.
Yeah, and Chief Moore said there would be a few more of those water-dropping helicopters making the rounds, and then as soon as they make sure that the building itself is not compromised, they would send firefighters back in to address what's happening inside the building and perhaps back on the roof. He did mention that that gas line. He said it was not toxic. The gas, the ammonia in there is not toxic unless individuals have respiratory issues, and that is why they had that shelter in place. He also said that they are monitoring the air, the wind downrange to monitor that toxic ammonia.
Right, and you could see the smoke, at least at this point, is more white than black, which is a good sign. The black will still build as the fire builds, but it looks like they're starting to get the upper hand on this fire, but there's a lot to go. He also said that they're going to eventually send in a robot on the inside of this building to do some evaluation and get a better idea on the damage of what's happening inside that doesn't put people's lives in danger, so they could get a better evaluation on that. Also, if you're stuck in traffic and you happen to be in a plume of smoke and the smoke is spreading everywhere, we get some great advice from Dave Coons, our car specialist, who says make sure that your car is on the recirculation so it's not sucking in air from the outside. But what may happen, that recirculation button sometimes turns itself off, so you might want to keep hitting that over and over again to keep it going. But some good advice if you're stuck on those freeways and you're stuck in the smoke.
Okay, we have Assemblymember Mark Gonzalez on the phone. Thank you for calling in. What would you like to share?
Well, thank you so much for covering this. Yes, Mark Gonzalez. I cover the 54th Assembly District, which includes Boyle Heights, City of Vernon, City of Commerce, City of Montebello, and downtown Los Angeles. Surrounding the area, my staff is monitoring this. I'm currently in Sacramento this week, but we're continuing to work with our partners just to identify and provide any resources needed to support impacted residents in the surrounding communities that I mentioned. I obviously want to thank first responders, our folks over at the Boyle Heights, firefighters, for keeping our area safe. The shelter in place that you guys have been mentioning that's currently in effect, We just want to reiterate to residents that they should immediately bring all people, pets indoors, close windows and doors, and turn off air conditioning and heating systems that you guys have been mentioning. For us, we're grateful to those first responders, but we're also working with Cal OES, and we're working with our state officials up here to monitor this to see what we can do, and working with American Red Cross and others just to see if folks can't go home or go to the area, they need to go somewhere. We want them to avoid the area, avoid the freeway as much as possible, and obviously just make sure that they are safe and they are avoiding that area as well.
Yeah, they're doing some great work out there. Just real quickly, have you ever seen a fire like this or been in a situation similar to this?
No, I do know a colleague up north who did experience this recently in her area, and I know that there's been conversations about whether or not N95 masks work or not. So just in the immediate, just to reiterate what you've been saying, if you are driving, just put the recirculation. It's that kind of circular arrow button for folks who don't know in their car. But more importantly, just stay where you're at, stay home, and if you can, you have the ability just to avoid the area.
Assemblymember Mark Gonzalez, thank you so much for joining us today. Great advice for your constituents as we continue to watch this firefight. Good luck in Sacramento. And so there you see a live picture from Boyle Heights, and this firefight continues. Those water dropping helicopters, they are doing the job, and another water drop there. You can see a substantial difference from what we saw just a few minutes ago when it comes to the flames. In fact, most of it now seems to be more white smoke. You can see they are still on fire. I don't want to give you a false sense of security. It is still on fire and it is still spreading, but it looks much better than it did just a little while ago. And again, they are continuing to fight this fire from the ground as well. You can see they're hitting it with hoses on the far side of the building, and the wind is trying to push the smoke and the fire towards where firefighters have staged themselves and away from the fresh part of the building that could still potentially burn. There's still a tremendous amount of those panels up on the rooftop, but luckily the fire's approach on those panels is moving very slowly as we continue to watch this firefight. And we have crews on the ground and, of course, in the air as we watch the progress. The bottom line, though, your safety still is at risk. You need to shelter in place, and you need to make sure to abide by what everybody is telling you when it comes to the toxicity of that smoke. I'm going to bring in Mark Brown and Michelle Fisher right now to prepare for Eyewitness News at 5 o'clock.
All right, David, thank you so much. This fire again at this cold storage facility starting around 2:30 this afternoon. We have seen that thick black smoke blanketing the sky here in Boyle Heights. It appears to be much better now as we come up on the 5 o'clock hour. This is Eyewitness News at 5. We are continuing that live breaking news coverage of this massive fire that has broken out at a cold storage warehouse in Boyle Heights. I'm Michelle Fisher here with Mark Brown.
Indeed, the flames sending up that huge plume of smoke across the LA area. A shelter-in-place order has been issued for the neighborhood that surrounds this plant.
Yeah. And here's where this warehouse is located for you. It is right off the 5 freeway near the East LA interchange, where at this time there's already a lot of traffic. It's rush hour.
We have our Leanne Suter apparently on the scene there. Let's get to Leanne with more information from the ground. Can you hear us?
Mark and Michelle, this remains a very, I can hear you guys. If you guys can hear me, Mark and Michelle, this remains a very difficult firefight for LAFD here in Boyle Heights. I'll step out of the way. You can see a live look over my shoulder. We've been watching as several of the water dropping helicopters have been coming in and hitting the fire as hard as it can from the air. It has made a tremendous difference in the amount of smoke that we are seeing billowing from the top of this cold storage facility here in Boyle Heights. And I know we have some video to show you guys what it looked like earlier today. A massive amount of thick black smoke was pouring off of this building. That fire breaking out around 2:30 this afternoon, apparently in the solar panels on top of the roof of this massive building. We are told that is at about 490,000 square foot warehouse. It is cold storage, and that became one of the issues in their firefight, in that there is an ammonia line that runs through the facility here, and officials had to shut that off because at one point during the fire they ended up having a leak in the ammonia, and they were worried about the potential chemical reaction with that as it was being dissipated into the wind and into the smoke of that fire. That is why they issued a safety warning and a shelter-in-place order for the neighborhoods all around this fire, telling everyone to shut their doors and windows and to turn off your air conditioning so that it doesn't bring in any of the potential toxins in the air that may be dissipating in the area here because of that fire. Now, as I mentioned earlier, they've been hitting this fire really hard from the air with their water dropping helicopters. That is not a normal tactic for LA City Fire, especially here in the heart of the city in Boyle Heights. But it is a very smart and strategic move by the fire department because they could no longer keep their crews on top of the roof. At one point, they determined that it was simply too dangerous to keep all of the firefighters up there, and that's when they retreated, went into defensive posture, and they called in the helicopters and began hitting the flames with water from above. And again, that has made a tremendous impact on the flames and knocking down the fire that they say essentially has been burning throughout all of the solar panels on top of the roof here. They don't know yet if it has gotten into the roof of the building. That is what they're going to be assessing next as the work continues. But first they need to make sure that it is safe for all of their firefighters to be able to return to the building and go inside the building and make sure that there's no danger to them of the roof collapsing or something like that. They have brought in one of their robots that they're going to be sending in, they said shortly, to get a look inside first to get a sense of what the roof looks like from the inside and the interior of that massive warehouse to determine if they can get all of the firefighters inside, if it is safe for them. We just heard from the chief a couple of moments ago and said it was about 6 years ago that they used the water dropping helicopters on a similar fire in Echo Park simply because they couldn't get their firefighters inside the building or on the roof of that tall building at the time, and that was what they did here in this blaze. Back live now, this entire area all around this facility, it is the Lineage facility, again, a massive warehouse, 490,000 square feet, the entire roof virtually covered with those solar panels, and that's what made this such a difficult fight. And why it took them so long to be able to try to get a handle on it. But back live here at the scene, things are looking good. You can see over my shoulder, we're not seeing as much smoke, which is a really good thing. We keep seeing the helicopters coming in and hitting it with water. And now you can see that they have the aerial units going again. So that means that they're getting closer to being able to get some of their crews in here, which is exactly what they want. They need to get inside, get a better sense of where the fire is burning and if it has gotten into the roof line and if it has damaged the building itself. But again, crews expected to be out here throughout the night as this firefight continues. Live in Boyle Heights, Leanne Suter, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Leanne, while we still have you there, if you're able to hear me, we were going to try to check in with Leanne possibly about the air quality there. Obviously, we've been telling our viewers that they need to, remain indoors for the shelter in place. Are you smelling anything, or is there any sense on the ground there where you are of just how toxic and bad the air around you might be?
There certainly is a major concern for the air quality, and they are consistently and routinely testing it as we speak. But they're focusing mainly on the downwind from the fire. And I'm going to step out of the way again just so you can see what I'm talking about, Michelle. You can see the smoke kind of pushing off to the southeast, and those are the neighborhoods that they're most concerned about simply because that is where the wind is taking all of this smoke and that potential ammonia. I have to tell you that here at the scene, every once in a while, very briefly, you get a slight smell of that ammonia, but nothing that is of danger on this side of the fire, simply because the wind is pushing it that way. But they want to make sure that all of the residents and neighborhoods around this area stay safe, and that's why they issued that shelter-in-place order.
All right, Leanne, thank you. We've been talking a lot about the ammonia that's within the building. The panels themselves release a lot of toxic gases as they burn. Solar panels are highly toxic when they burn. They release lead, cadmium, toxic gases like hydrogen fluoride and hydrogen chloride. So it's not just the ammonia that folks there on the scene and downwind should be worried about. It is those toxic gases that are released by the solar panels themselves as they burn. And there's quite a bit of smoke, as you see, being released. Good work here being done by the LA City Fire Department, again dropping using this kind of unconventional effort to drop water from the air on this building as it burns.
Yeah, and it looks like it's been working compared to what we've seen just about 20 or 30 minutes ago. We do want to talk about what this company does. We know it's the Lineage cold storage facility, just this massive facility in the middle of Boyle Heights. Our Mark Carter-Robles is standing by to tell us more about what we know about this particular company that's now at the center of this big fire. Mark?
Yeah, Mark and Michelle, anytime something like this happens, I think we quickly learn about whatever business is involved, and that is happening this afternoon. Again, this fire started nearly 2 hours ago. We've been covering it since about 3:15 this afternoon. We do want to show you, though, we have discovered that this very same building burned nearly 2 years ago in August of 2024. It took about an hour for firefighters to knock the fire down that time. So again, that was August of 2024, a fire, and I believe that's the video that you're seeing there on screen. Also involving the solar panels, if that is correct. So that is a new detail, that fire is not unique maybe to this facility. Of course, this one today, much, much larger in size. With this 491,000 square foot facility. What we are learning about the building, again, this is a global company, Lineage, working on cold storage of food and beverages. 25, by my count, 25 facilities in Southern California, 6 of them in the Inland Empire, and 19 in the Los Angeles area, even a facility in the Long Beach area, and specifically in this Boyle Heights area, and even into Vernon. There are multiple of the cold storage facilities in close proximity. So multiple facilities nearby. This is considered the Los Palos Street location. The website detailing what exactly they do at this specific facility. It is considered a port location. I would assume that multiple of the facilities in Southern California considered port locations in proximity to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, working on that cold storage, imports and exports. The website including photos inside of this very specific facility with rows and rows stacked up high of the cold storage, also working on something known as blast freezing. Certainly that is going to be part of the investigation into what potentially started the fire this time. Again, when we went on the air at 3:15, the fire was burning on the solar panels on top of the roof of this facility. And then roughly 15 minutes later, when honestly we thought this fire was out, Chris Christie and Air 7 noticed what appeared to be like a fireball coming from inside the building, and then the fire ignited and just took off. Before I send it back, if possible, to take another look at maybe the current scene of this fire, we did uncover some information about the building and honestly the company Lineage and their efforts for energy efficiency. They are part of something known as the Climate Pledge. That is something that was co-founded about 70 years ago by Amazon and Global Optimism. Lineage saying they have signed on to that. They are committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2040 across its operations. And of note here, part of that, to meet that goal, is through a combination, listen to this, of innovative energy efficiency measures, including on-site energy generation, solar energy. And so the thing that they are passionately behind, perhaps now involved in this hazmat situation impacting so many communities now here in the downtown and Boyle Heights area. So quite unfortunate to kind of determine and realize that connection. But again, solar panels all across the roof of this 491,000 square foot facility. Unclear if multiple of their facilities, if all of them have solar panels. But again, it appears to be connected to their Climate Pledge, something that was founded 70 years ago by Amazon and Global Optimism, something that may be part of this investigation when it comes down to the cause of the fire. Mark and Michelle, will send it back to you.
All right, Mark Carter-Robles, thank you. As we look at the roof of the building, fire looking a lot better than it was, but we have, of course, that air quality issue and the extreme hazard posed by the panels and the ammonia that is leaking and or burning. Let's get more from our health reporter, Denise Dedore, on the air quality and what people should be doing right now. Denise.
Well, Mark and Michelle, I'm standing on the roof of our ABC7 studios here in Glendale, and as you can see behind me, that toxic smoke, it's starting to dissipate a bit. As you can see, it's moving from the east to the west over the Hollywood Hills. It's looking a lot less thicker than it was earlier today, so that's good news. But again, we've been hearing about what could possibly be in that smoke. We know that solar panels are involved. We talked about trace amounts of lead and plastic and polymers, not good for you at all. But then during the press conference, we heard the LA fire chief tell us that they're concerned about ammonia off-gassing. Now, ammonia off-gassing can be highly irritating and potentially dangerous, but as he told us, not particularly a problem for people who have healthy lungs, but for people who are vulnerable, those with asthma, coronary artery disease, diabetes, any underlying condition, that can be a problem because ammonia is a corrosive gas. It reacts with moisture. It can affect your eyes, your throat, your lungs. So that is why we've had this shelter in place. We've been told to tell people not to run their air conditioner. They don't want any of these fumes getting into people's homes because we know that ammonia has this sharp odor to it. And so immediately they told the public to shelter in place, especially if you're anywhere near this fire or downwind of this fire. But we're hoping that it's clearing out. As we can see, the smoke is definitely dissipating, but we know we have a long firefight against all night that's going to be happening. And again, we have people in the cars who are driving by. We want to also remind them to put their recycled air on and to keep checking, because you do not want to inhale any of this, and you want to be careful when you're driving because it is causing quite a stir on the freeway. We have traffic, but we know we have people who are looking at the smoke and wondering what this is. So again, shelter in place if you're near this fire. Try not to go out and about. If you have to be in the area, pull out your N95 mask. We know what to do when there are structure fires, but this is a very unusual fire. One of the first times that I've heard health officials to tell us not to run your air conditioner, but make sure that you keep your doors and windows closed. Don't use any swamp coolers or attic fans. We want to make sure that the air inside your space stays as clean as possible. Reporting live here in Glendale, Denise Tador, ABC 7 Eyewitness News. Mark and Michelle, back to you in the studio.
All right, Denise Tador, thank you so much for that information again on the air quality right now, as that is of concern for crews that are out there battling this fire in Boyle Heights. We do want to get to Dallas Rains. The wind always a factor when there's large fires like these that are blowing that toxic smoke every which way. So Dallas, tell us what we need to know.
That's right, Michelle. The winds are typical for an afternoon in June, so they're coming out of the west in that area, blowing that toxic smoke to the east. So when you look at it on the map there, you can see the winds coming out of the west, southwest, anywhere between about 5 and 15 miles per hour. There they are right there. So you would be most concerned if you are east or southeast of where the fire is. And remember, those are solar panels that are burning, and they are very toxic. So you have lead is number one, but cadmium among others, very, very toxic. Now we look at this map here. I love this one because this shows the wind field across the area. As I mentioned, these are gusts, so it's generally 5 to 15 with occasional gusts up to about 20 miles per hour. Here's the good news on the wind. It'll start backing off a little bit. Once the sun goes down, we'll see these winds become quite light and kind of drift out of the south between about 5 and 7 knots. So nothing, no really strong winds here to deal with. But again, if you are east of that fire, that is a very, very toxic situation. No doubt about that.
All right, Dallas Rains, thank you. And it's not out yet. As we see, you know, it starts to calm down and then flare-ups happen. We saw a flare-up down towards that, what I guess would be the western portion of the building there, a flare-up of more flames. And so this is not by any means, although it does look better, it's not out yet, and the danger and the hazard is still very evident.
Yeah, and it looks like they're using this adjacent building there to the right on our screen here. Oh, actually, that's just a ladder coming up. For some reason, I thought they were possibly on the other building there, using that building to get access to the fire there. But also, we have seen within the past couple minutes or so some more water drops from these helicopters, which again, just a unique situation here by LA City Fire using that water drop. The last time something similar happened was in Echo Park about 6 years ago when a building there was on fire. But because of the unique situation here with this field, what they described as a field covering just so much of the top of this building with solar panels. They decided that was the best way to get water onto this fire to extinguish those flames. But again, still some active flames that we're seeing there at the top of our screens as crews continue to work to try to get this fire under control. Expected that they'll be there for hours throughout the evening.
And our reporter at the scene, Leanne Suter, has an update for us. Leanne.
Mark and Michelle, as Michelle just said, yeah, this firefight going to continue for hours. We just saw another one of the helicopters come in and drop some water on the fire. Take a live look over my shoulder here. You can see the color of the smoke is considerably lighter than we saw earlier this afternoon, which is great news. But at the same time that I say that, I see that they have another section. If Duncan can kind of pan off to the side here, you can see a little darker spot that has now popped up again on this side of the roof. So from our vantage point, it's hard to tell where on the roof the fire is going and which way it's kind of moving. But since we've been here, I would say that it has started to push towards the west side of the building, and that's where we're now seeing a little bit of the darker smoke coming up, but certainly not the massive plumes that we were seeing earlier today, which is good news. The impact of those water dropping helicopters has been tremendous in knocking this down, and a very strategic move by the LA City Fire Department in deciding to take that action when they had to pull all of their crews from the building because of the danger and because of the risk to their crews. They weren't sure what was happening to the roof of that building, if the fire had gotten down into the actual roof or if it was staying up amongst all of the solar panels. So because of that danger to all of the firefighters, they had to pull all their crews out, and then that is when they decided to come in with the water dropping helicopters. And they have started to move in with their aerial ladders occasionally here and hitting the fire from above. We spoke to Chief Jamie Moore about the firefight and about this blaze and what made it so difficult. Let's take a listen.
Commercial area in Boyle Heights. What they encountered was a very large 1,000 by 500 foot commercial building. Initial companies that arrived on scene reported fire through the roof on a portion of this roof. The Los Angeles Fire Department immediately went into an aggressive offensive stance in trying to mitigate this fire. We got companies that were going on the roof and companies that were going inside the building. This building is 1,000 by 500 feet in dimensions. Fire companies started making this aggressive attack. We did have fire that reached a ammonia line, and with that ammonia line, that ammonia started off-gassing. The incident commander then immediately asked all companies to pull from the inside of the building and pull off of the roof, and we went into a defensive posture. This off-gassing of ammonia was a very large, pressurized off-gas line. So the incident commander called for a shelter in place for the area because of the nature of ammonia. Now, this ammonia is not toxic to individuals unless they have respiratory issues or they're in direct contact with the ammonia. We asked that people shelter in place in order to avoid any contact with the product that was in the air.
Back live now here, you can see the smoke again coming off of the building. What I want to reference with the chief, what he did say is they shut down that ammonia line pretty quickly once they arrived on scene, once they realized kind of the situation they had in that building, and that was to try to obviously alleviate any more danger to the public. What they've been dealing with is a little bit of the residual ammonia in the line once it was shut down. But because they shut it down so quickly, there really hasn't been that much in there. They believe all of that has now off-gassed. The concern is just for the area residents and neighborhoods where the wind is pushing all of that smoke. They just don't want any potential risk to residents in the area. You heard him say that it is not particularly toxic or too dangerous unless you obviously have some underlying health issues or you are at risk with some respiratory issues, and that is a major concern. But they certainly want to be extremely safe in this, and they are continuing to test the air. You can hear one of the helicopters, water dropping helicopters, just went overhead one more time, dropping some water there. Again, they're testing air quality. They're monitoring the situation to make sure that there are no extremely high levels and to make sure that they keep everyone informed. But at this point, the ammonia has been shut off. They believe that all the lines have cleared. They believe that that danger really is dissipating. The battle now is just trying to make sure that that fire is fully knocked down. Live in Boyle Heights, Leanne Suter, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Yeah, Leanne, we're seeing from the air, I don't know if you can see this from your vantage point, some firefighters kind of moving around the perimeter of the building on foot, approaching the building. Have you gotten any evidence, or is anybody there saying that firefighters are preparing to go inside the building to fight the fire?
Yeah, that is their plan. I know that the chief said probably about half an hour ago that they were getting ready to do just that once they felt that the building was structurally sound enough for them to start to go in and see if they can fight that, the blaze from the inside, to make sure that, you know, they stop it within the roof line. So that is the plan. From my vantage point, unfortunately, I have not been able to see any crews that we can see going in. This is more of the aerial fight here. I also know that they have evacuated all of the businesses surrounding this cold storage facility so that no one in any of those businesses are at risk. But the chief said, yes, that is exactly the plan. They do plan on having firefighters enter the building here at any moment to try to see where the fire stands inside and what damage has occurred to the building, the whole structure due to this fire.
All right, Leanne, thank you so much for that live report from the ground there. We do want to also, make sure we remind you that there are some evacuation orders in effect right now for a certain area. And just to go over what those are again, it is north of Holabird Avenue, south of Golden State Freeway, east of Soto Street, and west of South Indiana Street. The blue area you see there is an advisory. So people in those areas just advised to stay inside of their homes. And again, we're hearing that you should turn off your air conditioner, also close your windows, close your doors, and remain inside for a shelter-in-place order in that blue area there. And on this map, you see the smoke there in kind of the center of that map, indicating where that fire is. And again, it's impacting this area around it. The majority of that area to the east there is the way that the wind is blowing there, which is why that area is larger than, say, the west side there where the wind is not blowing in that direction. So again, just people in that blue area be advised of the conditions out there with this toxic smoke as a result of this ongoing fire.
Again, and if you're in the purple area that you see there, stay indoors, lock or close your windows. Don't allow any outside air into your home. That means you got to turn off the AC. That means you got to turn off any fans that would be bringing any outside air into your home. That's the shelter-in-place area. That is the area that is most at risk from the fumes that are coming from both the solar panels and the ammonia that are inside this building. It's the firefighters admitting it's uncomfortable. It's gonna get hot, but better that than to breathe in these fumes. There can be long-term effects from some of the gases that are being released here, not just immediate effects. There could be long-term, especially when you talk about lead and other chemicals that are involved in the burning of the solar panels, as well as the ammonia that is inside.
I think it's one thing when you see that thick black smoke kind of overhead, it indicates to you, hey, there's something happening. But now we're to the point where the smoke is kind of disseminated a bit, so it's not as heavy as that visual indicator for people to kind of alert them to what's happening. But a reminder, even if you can't see it, that doesn't mean that the risk is not there. So we do want that reminder for people inside their homes. But not only that, many people right now in rush hour trying to make it home right now. So we do want to get to Danny Romero, keeping an eye on how this is all impacting traffic this afternoon. Danny?
Yeah, I tell you, Michelle, Mark, a couple things to keep an eye. People that got stuck here, give you an idea. Take a look at our map. We can see how impacted it is around the fire zone. Look at that 5 freeway. That's pretty much just all red there going east to west here. So that's a real tough drive. 710 north-south, that also all the red indicates a real tough drive as well. Now the 60 seems to be the way to go. If you need to get from the west side, from the 101 over towards Belvedere Gardens, Maravilla, Montebello out here, El Monte out here towards the east, 60 might be your better route to go. So if you're either making plans later on, that might be something to do. I mean, avoid the area if you can, but if you have to, that might be your way to go, because you don't want to do the 5, you don't want to do the 710. And if you have family or friends coming home to you on those routes, they are stuck in there for a while. And much like what Mark and Michelle and everybody else was saying, if they're in those cars, call them up, tell them, keep those windows rolled up, turn off the AC. Yes, uncomfortable, but thank goodness it's not as hot as it's been the last few days. But all that smoke is in that area, so that traffic condition, real bad. All the red on that 5, avoid that if you can, and call people if you're on there and just tell them to take the precautions we mentioned. 710, just as bad, north-south, all the red there. So the 60, as far as traveling, the 72 also right here in the middle are a couple spots that might get you from the West Side 101 over past the 710 towards Montebello, Belvedere Gardens, Montavia as well. So just again, be careful there and avoid it if you can. All right, Mark, Michelle, go ahead.
Danny Romero, thank you. This is an ongoing situation that is affecting tens of thousands of people in and around Boyle Heights. Abigail Velez, you are at or near the scene. What can you tell us from your vantage point?
Yeah, Mark, we are at the scene. We're on Los Palos Street. This is a residential area here, but police and first responders have this entire street blocked off. In fact, they have the entire block blocked off. A lot of people not able to reach their homes tonight. You can hear the helicopters in the air as the firefighting efforts continue this afternoon. And we know that we've heard that there are shelter in places and air quality advisories in effect, but still some people here you can see are outside looking at what's going on as their street remains closed. Some people wearing masks. I can tell you that police are requiring you to wear masks. When we entered the street, the police told me you need to put on a mask before you come in here. Some people still taking heed of that, others not. But we do see a lot of people who live in this area still outside wondering what's going on. Some people are in their gated behind their homes, behind these gates, looking at what's going on and saying, how is the fire coming along? Do you smell that? And we can indeed confirm that there is a smell in the air. I'm sorry, the best way I can describe it as a chemical smell. We've been talking about this all afternoon, that there is definitely toxic materials in the air. So it's important that you do what you can to protect yourselves by wearing masks. But we don't know what effects that this could have in the long term. A lot of these neighborhoods and neighbors here are saying that they're worried about that. Of course, this one woman that I just spoke to who did not want to be on camera did tell me that her daughter has respiratory issues. She's about 30 years old, and she had to leave her home because she was worried that the smoke would enter her home and it would affect her. Again, you can see how active this scene is right now. We're literally right on Los Palos Street, right adjacent to that building that was on fire. Still a massive first responder response here. But again, neighbors saying that they're worried about the chemicals in the air. That one neighbor saying her daughter had to evacuate her home, worried about the concerns that she had with lingering asthma. Some neighbors, of course, still inside of their homes, but other people still walking. When we were arriving here, there were some people who didn't even know what was going on, who were just out and about. So that's why it's important to notify your neighbors that this is an active situation and we don't know what is in the air, how contaminated the air quality is right now. I don't know if you can see some neighbors walking. You have to keep in mind this is around 5 o'clock. Some people getting off of work right now, returning back to their homes. Some people getting off of school, whatever the case may be. But neighbors seem to be out and about. This one man here taking out his trash. Neighbors do understand what's going on, but there still has to be some normalcy in this neighborhood. Again, we're right parallel adjacent to this building that was on fire. These neighbors here wearing masks, but you can see that they're definitely not inside. We have this one man driving by, windows down, mask still on. It's 5 o'clock. People got to get home. They're doing what they need to do. But yeah, we're right here at the scene. Definitely active. They have most of this block blocked off. If you live here, they'll let you through, but they are requiring masks to get inside. But for now, that's what we're looking at, Mark. I'm going to try to talk to more neighbors in the area, ask them what's going through their minds. Again, they say that they can smell this chemically smell in the air. They're concerned, but they're going about their business, it looks like.
And Abigail, you mentioned that some of the individuals were not even aware this was happening. I wonder if anyone's mentioned any type of alert that maybe would have gone out, a massive alert to the community impacted on their cell phones. Anybody mention that? Or when you came into the area, did your phone start going off by any chance?
Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. I actually got 2 alerts on my phone, both saying that a shelter in place has been issued by the county and the city. I will say, though, from what I've seen in these immediate houses here, the people who live here seem to be elderly. So you have to keep in mind many of them might not have smartphones. They might not be getting those alerts. They probably rely on the people who they have that are younger in their lives. For example, the woman that I spoke to here who had that 30-year-old daughter with respiratory issues. You know, she said, my daughter got an alert on her phone. She took off. She doesn't want to stay here. But she was was still out and about. These people who live here who are taking out their trash, you saw that they're elderly. I can tell them that this is definitely going on, but of course it's up to their own discretion whether they want to shelter in place or not. That's what we've seen on Los Palos Street. What's going on further in the block, we're going to check out, see if other people are still hunkering down inside of their homes. But it is an active situation. Before, just about 30 minutes ago, there was a black plume of smoke in the sky. Right now, you don't see that in this area. You don't see that smoke in the sky, which is important that people still understand that this is active. Just because you don't see smoke in the air, it means it's not over. So please understand that this is still ongoing. You see the black plume in the sky a little bit further down, but not here in this immediate area. What you do still have is that lingering smell. You can smell it in the area. Here's somebody else driving by with their windows down. Excuse me, ma'am. Hit or miss. Anyways, people still driving. This area is blocked off. We'll see how far she ends up getting, but you know, people still out and about.
And an indicator, well, just real quick, if you can smell it, that means you're inhaling it. So that is something to really be concerned about. Let's get to Chris Christie in Air 7 overhead with more on what he's able to see from his vantage point. Chris?
Hey there, Mark. Taking a closer look now at what remains of the roof of the building. Several things of interest to point out as they continue to drop water via helicopter on the roof of this building. First of all, the reason this fire is visibly out, that's not to say the fire is out. In fact, we do not know, nor do firefighters really know exactly how much flames are active inside the building, because as far as we know, firefighters still have not been back inside the building. Part of that is because you can see the buckling in the roof right there. They are not secure in terms of the structural integrity of this building quite yet. But the roof never fully caved in. Despite all of that intense flame and heat and all of the large smoke that was produced, somehow an engineering feat here, as the roof of the building is still in place. So it never actually caved in, but it was the work of those helicopters, those water drops, that was able to get this fire somewhat under control and at least put out the visible flames on the roof. That was all mainly due to the work of those helicopters. These pipe ladders, these ladder pipes, I should say, are very effective to an extent. But in this situation, it was those 480-gallon water drops that really did the bulk of the work here, and now will allow them sooner rather than later to continue their examination inside the eastern half of this building. Notably, the western half of the building on the left side of your screen remains intact, and that is most likely because of the sprinkler systems and the firewalls inside this building. It was designed to, basically partition itself off in the event of something like this. So some interesting words of note there. In the meantime, in terms of the air quality, things are looking much better. The smoke that we were seeing for the first hour to hour and a half has largely dissipated, but that does not mean that those particulates or those particles are not still in the air. And what we see here, and what we saw in the probably after the first few minutes, because originally the smoke was going straight up into the air and then into the atmosphere, and then the breeze picked up and carried much of the smoke towards the east into Montebello, over the 710 freeway. And then what happened is we widened out. I want to give you some perspective here. It's a little bit faint, but you can see a lot of that light smoke was drifting towards the right, leaving behind a cloud over the 710 and very hazy air. If you look near the top of your screen, there's now a thick haze that blankets East LA over the 710 freeway, over Montebello. But if we go ahead and pan over to the left, you're going to see downtown LA. And at the upper levels, at around 4,000 feet likely, you see there is smoke over the downtown skyline. So first, the cloud drifted to the east, and once it gained altitude, it then drifted back over to the west. And as you look at this live shot, there's a layer of smoke directly over downtown LA. So this firefight here, and as they try and get their arms around this hazardous situation, the ammonia in that leak may not be particularly hazardous, but all of the other chemicals and the building materials in this building certainly are not healthy to breathe in whatsoever. Mark?
All right, indeed. And the view from the left, the camera on the left there, that's our camera in Malibu showing this massive plume of smoke. All of those particulates are going to drift around and eventually fall to Earth. Not sure where, of course, and that is another something that will need to be mitigated, at least in the area around the fire. Worth noting, too, this is a fairly densely populated part of the city. It is one of the oldest parts of the city of Los Angeles, more than 120 years old. Many of these neighborhoods, if not the structures themselves, densely populated. A lot of people live there. A lot of people potentially can be affected by this.
Yeah, and when we heard from Abigail mentioning some of those neighbors who kind of were moving about business as usual, we have learned that there was a fire about 2 years ago, back in 2024, at this same facility on the roof, also involving the solar panels. It was something that we covered the day it actually happened. So I wonder if these individuals are kind of accustomed to this type of industrial area and sometimes fires breaking out, and so they are not as concerned as maybe they should be as to what's happening above their heads as they move about their neighborhoods, possibly.
Indeed. Let's get more from Leanne Suter. She is at the scene now. Air 7 making note, Chris Christie did, Leanne, of some apparent buckling in the roof of the structure. Could that be delaying the internal attack?
Yeah, that's certainly a good question, Mark, and that is one of the things that LA City Fire Department is trying to determine, the structural integrity of the building and just how much damage all of the flames, that heat, what that has done to the roof and to the structure of that massive warehouse, 491,000 square feet. It is huge. And so there is a really big danger to just immediately send firefighters inside if there is any structural problems with the roof. I'm going to step out of the way here. What I want to talk about is the decision by LA City Fire to bring in some of those helicopters, those water dropping helicopters, because that has truly been the key to their firefight today because of the danger for the crews on the ground. And we've been watching them come in and out just nonstop, hitting this building so hard with the air. But what is so impressive, we see them in action with so many of the wildfires, and you see how close they come to the homes and to just to the ground itself. I mean, just making sure they make these precision drops, and they practice routinely for this, and they are some of the most skilled pilots out there. But I have to tell you, watching them today has been absolutely astounding, simply because you are in the heart of the city. There are power lines completely surrounding this building, as you can see here, and those helicopters have come in so low to make sure that they get that drop right on top of those panels, and they have nailed it every time. And the chief says this is why they decided to make that tactical move.
Our defensive attack then led to a totally unique operation that the Los Angeles Fire Department decided to do, and that was the use of water dropping helicopters. Because the nature of this fire was solely on the roof, involving these solar panels, and it was creeping along almost like a brush fire would in a topographical area with grass, we decided to use water dropping helicopters to stop the majority of this fire from spreading throughout this building.
Yeah, and a really strategic decision, one that they haven't made in a number of years. The chief says the last time he remembers using those water dropping helicopters on a commercial fire in the city was about 6 years ago for another major commercial blaze. I'm going to try to touch base right now with the chief or with some of the other fire department officials here to see where they stand in terms of the structural damage and structural integrity of the building here, and when they hope to be able to send firefighters inside. As soon as I get that information, I of course will bring it to you. That's the very latest here live in Boyle Heights. Leanne Suter, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Leanne, thank you so much for those live details and the latest there on the ground. We do want to get to some video from earlier that we want to show you again. This fire breaking out around 2:30 this afternoon at this cold storage facility in Boyle Heights. You see what was smoke eventually just exploding into this ball of fire and thick black smoke that eventually spread over this massive spread of solar panels, which is on the top of this building here. Our Mark Cotterill was telling us this company is part of a global pledge to have net zero emissions by 2040. And so a lot of the energy that cools the items inside comes from the top of this building here, and the solar panels that have now just completely burned, a large portion of the top of that building burning in this fire that again started around 2:30. So we are at 3 hours now of this ordeal. We also do have some time-lapse video that we want to show you of the smoke and how it moved across downtown Los Angeles from Boyle Heights, kind of blanketing the downtown area as we move into rush hour to where we are now. And a reminder for our viewers as well, if you have video that you happen to capture from your cell phones and you can send it to us, we would love to see what you saw from your vantage point of this fire, again, burning in Boyle Heights at the Lineage cold storage facility. So please send that in to us. You can use the QR code on your screen or go to abc7.com/eyewitness.
This is a neighborhood above all. Let's go to Abigail Velez. She is in the neighborhood surrounding the storage facility with more. Abigail? Can you hear us, Abigail?
Do you have me? Testa said, do you have me, Mark? I'm Mark Michelle. I'm with my new friends here, Javier and Robert. They just found out what was going on just 10 minutes ago. They work right across the street from this building that was actively on fire. It was just 10 minutes ago that they discovered, though. Okay, so Javier, talk to me about how you figured out what was happening.
My brother just came pounding on the door, and we didn't even know what was going on. He saw it on the news, actually, and he heard the street names and just freaked out and didn't know if it was part of this building or if we were involved in it or whatever. And he just kept pounding on the door and answered it, and here we are.
You answered the door. What does your brother tell you?
Freaking out. He's pushing me, like mad at me because I didn't answer my phone. I was working.
Yeah, he was blowing them up.
And yeah, he's just freaking out. He left right away, but he was just mad because I didn't answer the door.
Okay,
he drove from La Habra.
Yeah.
Once he saw it.
Wow, that's a long drive just to make sure you're okay. That's a good brother. And for you, Robert, you're working all day. What comes to mind when you walk outside and you see this going on?
Nothing. I'm just in shock. In belief and disbelief of what's going on right now.
Yeah. And so you missed the smoke, you missed the flames, but what does it smell like to you right now?
It doesn't smell good.
I don't smell anything, actually.
I don't think it smells good.
What do you smell?
Smell chemicals?
Yeah.
I don't even smell it.
So I don't know if fire officials or police have come to you. They forced me to put on a mask. Is that a concern that you have right now, knowing that these solar panels were actively on fire for hours?
Probably go back inside.
Yeah.
But no, they walked right past us. They didn't tell us anything about a mask or anything.
Has anything like this ever happened in this area?
Not this close, but warehouses have caught fire over here. This is the industrial area of East LA, so it has happened, but nothing this big that I can remember.
When you think about this, how does this make you feel that this happened so closely? It's still an active situation.
It's interesting. Did anyone get hurt?
Well, luckily we're not entirely sure, but we're not hearing any reports of injuries. But I mean, I'm sure you can hear the helicopters, these water helicopters. We all
hope everyone's all right.
Yeah, of course. Do you feel lucky at all, considering in how close proximity it happened right there? You know, do you feel lucky?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Could easily jump, over here. With the wind.
It's windy right now. It's real windy. It could have easily jumped the buildings. So yeah.
For people who aren't aware, we were just in one of these residential areas. Talk to me about this area. You know, you guys work here, you're familiar. Can you talk about what's in this area?
Well, behind us there's a bunch of homes. This street is all industrial, but it's full of residential side streets. So there are houses right here. We share a back wall with one of the houses.
Yeah. When you see all these first responders, do you feel like this is something that you've never experienced in your life before? Like, what comes to mind?
I don't know. I'm just kind of in shock, I guess. Just tripping out on everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, I'm not really.
I know. If this freaks you out, just go over here. There's more. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. You should definitely get inside and put a mask on. Yeah, it's so nice talking to you guys. Yeah, there's a lot of people out here like this, Mark, Michelle, who are mystified to find out what is going on. These men were working all day, and they said it was 10 minutes ago that they realized what was happening. But right behind them, like they explained, is a residential area. Just moments ago, I spoke to this man that said that he has 2 kids, a wife, and a baby granddaughter in the home right now, all of which are very concerned. And he literally told me the biggest biggest fear that he's had all day is that it was going to jump to his house. He said that he still has that fear right now until the last flame is put out. He's going to continue to have that fear tonight, worried that it can jump over to his home. I asked him if he was concerned about the chemicals in the air, and he said, well, yeah, of course, but my biggest fear, I'm too scared, worried that my house is going to catch on fire because I have a whole family to tend to right now. That's a major concern that we've heard from neighbors, none of which want to go on camera. This is a quaint neighborhood. Everyone seems very quiet and to themselves, but they all have shared that similar concern with me. They're worried that their home is going to catch on fire as soon as they learned that it was the solar panels and that the air quality is now filled with chemicals. That's when they say, okay, well, let's get inside, let's put a mask on. Obviously, we don't know the long-term effects of that, and we don't know the specific air quality, but this, like I said, is the vast majority of homeowners here seem to be elderly. That is a concern for people who have respiratory issues, and when they learn that these solar panels were on fire for hours, they say, okay, I'm going to get inside. They're a little more concerned now. These men, again, just found out what was happening 10 minutes ago. They seem visibly in shock. We're going to check out another neighborhood, but from the people we've spoken to, they're very concerned, mostly about the fire. They want it completely put out, but again, also the toxic hazardous materials that are now in the air.
All right, Abigail Velez, thank you so much for that live report. You heard Abigail mention it. Definitely some concern about the toxic chemicals that are coming from those solar panels. Also, what triggered the original shelter in place was the ammonia off-gassing from inside that building. So we do want to get to our Denise Dodor, who has been keeping track of just the air quality outside and how it is dangerous to people, especially those who already have pre-existing health conditions. Denise, what can you tell us?
Well, Michelle, what a difference an hour and a half makes. When we first came up here at 4 o'clock, there was a thick plume of black smoke right behind me that was moving from east to west. Now it's dissipated quite a bit. Now we don't see the big thick smoke, but we do see it haze, and I can tell you something, we smell it. We're about 10 miles north of the fire, and we definitely can smell something in the air. It's not like a burning wood smell from a brush fire, definitely a little more chemical smell that we're experiencing. It's an unusual fire where residents have been told to shelter in place and not to run their air conditioners, and this is the reason why they're concerned that some of these toxic fumes can get into the home. Like our Abigail Velez reported, residents in that area say they smell chemicals in the air. We know solar panels have been burning. Typical materials in these panels include plastics and polymers. When they burn, it produces carbon monoxide. These chemicals can break down into hazardous fluoride gases and vapors, and we're talking about trace amounts of lead as well. We learned that there was an ammonia gas line. The concern was off-gassing, a highly corrosive chemical, highly irritating to the eyes, nose, and airways, but hopefully that concern has been mitigated. Now, the fire chief did tell us that the ammonia is a concern to people who are vulnerable, not necessarily healthy people, but we know this is a very corrosive chemical that can irritate your eyes and your airways, and the problem depends on the concentration. So we want to make sure if you're near the area to run your car on recycled air, keep your doors and windows closed in your homes, and wear an N95 mask if you happen to be passing through. Live in Glendale, Denise Dodor, ABC 7 Eyewitness News. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Denise, some great information there. People definitely need to be cautious here. We are taking another live look for you over this roof here, just burned. These were solar panels at one point, now just charred beyond recognition. The top of this building, you see the contrast between the solar panels that are still intact there and what is happening at the top of your screen. We do want to get to our Leanne Suter, who's on the ground there. Leanne, how's it going?
Michelle, that firefight continuing, but again, looking like they are making some very good progress, especially based on the amount of smoke we are seeing. But to get the very latest, let's check in with Captain Brandon Silverman, LA City Fire. Captain, this firefight, you guys were talking about making entrance into the building. Where do you stand with that game plan at this point?
Right, so initially we went to an offensive attack, but we had to pull our crews out and go defensive due to the fact that there was a potential ammonia leak at one point. So at this point, we have most of the fire knocked down that seems to be contained to the roof area and the solar panels. Now we need to get crews inside to make sure that the fire didn't extend at all and there are no other hazards inside the building. It's a very large building. I think you've heard 500 feet by 1,000 feet or so. So we do have our hazmat crews on scene as well as our urban search and rescue teams. So they're going to work in conjunction with each other to go in, monitor the air to make sure they're not exposing themselves to anything while they do a search of the building for all intents and purposes to make sure that the fire didn't extend there, there's no kind of leak and also that there's no structural compromise.
You had said a moment ago, we were talking about how all the solar panels caught fire. One would assume that that would mean it would spread right to the roof of the building, but you're saying that may not be the case.
Correct. Yeah, at this time we don't have indications that the fire extended into the building. However, like I said, the building being so large, it's really hard to assess without sending crews in, and we're going to make sure we do that safely, of course. But I mean, as you know, heat does rise, so there is the potential that that fire on the roof did continue to extend upwards, and we did have crews on scene very quickly knocking down that fire. We initially were using our ladder pipes to put a lot of water on the roof, but those solar panels do cover a wide area, so it's hard to get all the water where we need it, where the fire is extending. We did have the helicopters fly over, and that's not a normal operation that you would see on a structure fire. However, the IC, the incident commander, made a very good decision of calling in those helicopters to get a large amount of water very quickly so that we can prevent the fire from getting bigger. We have surrounding areas with brush and buildings and other residents that we wanted to make sure that we protected.
A lot of folks have been asking questions about the risk because of the ammonia. Obviously a very big risk for the crews out there. When that gets into the air, you guys made the choice to issue that shelter-in-place order. What is the risk at this point for area residents, and how do you determine when it is time to lift that?
Right, yeah, so the good news is that once our hazardous materials teams did get on scene, they started doing active air monitoring as well as monitoring the runoff in the water, and they didn't find anything out of the ordinary other than normal combustibles. So we still wouldn't advise anybody to be in the area where there's breathing smoke, because smoke is toxic on its own, but we didn't find any additional hazardous materials or chemicals within that smoke that we're concerned about at this time. So what we're going to do is once we do that assessment of the building and ensure that there's no other hazards within the building, then we'll be able to lift that shelter-in-place order and start returning people who evacuated from the immediate area. When our firefighters got on scene, they worked in conjunction with LAPD to evacuate the business itself as well as the surrounding businesses and houses in the immediate streets adjoining this business. The shelter-in-place order was put in place to the direction that the smoke was blowing, and that there was one zone within LA City that was impacted, and there were a couple zones to the east in the LA County's jurisdiction that got advisories as well. Anyone with any kind of health problems, we would advise not to breathe any smoke, of course, and we do advise that if you can smell the smoke, it would be good to keep your windows and doors shut. If you have a recirculating closed system, air conditioning system, you can keep that air conditioning system running, but if your air conditioning system brings in air from the outside, we would advise you to turn it off.
So at this point, the danger from the smoke is that slowly dissipating, but the ammonia, that risk seems to have passed at this point.
Correct, yeah. Since we're not finding any ammonia in the actual smoke itself or the runoff, we feel safe about that. However, we do want to conduct that assessment inside the building, and if we can deem that safe, then we'll start lifting those orders and warnings.
And talk about the building. If the fire, even just the heat, can the heat cause structural damage itself to the building and cause that roof to collapse or cause it to be weakened?
Definitely, and that's exactly why our urban search and rescue teams are on scene, so they can make a full assessment of the structural integrity of that building while the crews from the hazardous materials teams and others are inside searching the building for any other signs of hazards.
And I wanted to ask about the solar panels in particular. Does that create a different kind of firefight for you guys?
Definitely. Anytime a building has solar panels, it obstructs a lot of the roofing material. So number one, it adds weight to the roof itself. The roofs are rated to handle that weight under normal conditions, but when you have a fire, of course, it's basically a building that's under demolition. So we have to make sure that that extra weight of the solar panels isn't causing that roof to have any structural compromise. And it also makes it difficult for us to access different pockets of fire that might be underneath the panels but above the roof. And normally in a structure fire, we would be cutting holes in the roof to ventilate any smoke that's inside, and when solar panels are covering it, it makes that operation a lot more difficult.
Really quickly, at this point, from your vantage point, it appears you guys are a pretty good handle on the fire at this point.
Yeah, looking at the fire itself, I feel very comfortable that the fire itself is not a hazard anymore. We do have a little bit of smoke lingering, and they're going to hit those hot spots, but it is going to be some time before we can deem the entire area safe, the building itself on the inside, and we'll be here for several hours.
Thank you so much, Captain Silverman. LA City Fire Department getting the latest. I appreciate that. As you just heard, they're going to be here for hours throughout the night. I'm certain throughout all night into the morning, just making sure everything is knocked down here with this blaze and that the building itself is structurally sound. Live in Boyle Heights, Leanne Suter, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, thank you, Leanne. And we have gotten official word from the fire department that the forward progress of the fire has been stopped. That's all good news, of course, but you do see smoke in the area and also downwind that is up in the air. Dallas Raines tracking the wind direction and speed for us. Dallas?
That's right, Mark. We had this time lapse going for you during the time the fire was started, and of course, all those solar panels releasing toxic materials into the atmosphere, and you could see that blowing from the west east. It was a typical afternoon in mid-June, so we had westerly winds across the area at about 5 to 15 miles per hour, occasional gusts a little higher. The good news tonight is that the winds will be backing down, and we'll see wind velocities drop below 5 miles per hour, and this is another shot for you. So we show you the wind field there coming from the west, southwest, blowing the toxic material to the east all the way. It's in the atmosphere. You got to remember that some of that lead and toxic material, gravity will eventually bring that down to the surface. So with that in mind, we take a look at that wind, and then overnight tonight, late this evening, you'll start to see these winds start to back away, and then we'll go to near calm conditions under cloudy skies later tonight. The marine layer is really going to ramp up in Southern California, and that is going to generate cooler temperatures. We'll take a quick look at the 7-day forecast. Look at these afternoon highs. Marine layer clouds, very thick, even the chance of some drizzle in the forecast. And then another weather alert for you will be next week. Now, that's way out there, I know, but we're going to see temperatures downtown approaching 90 degrees, and some of the warmer valleys next week after the June gloom will approach 100 degrees plus. We'll have more for you on that coming up on the 6th and the 11th tonight. I'll see you then.
All right, we'll see you then, Dallas. Thank
you
you so much. We do want to go ahead and get to Chris Christie, who's been live in Air 7 over this since the beginning of this fire. Chris?
Yeah, the roof continuing to smolder, but you know, after listening to the captain just a few moments ago, it's really remarkable. I'm struck by the fact that at the end of the day, this is going to be largely considered an architectural and engineering success story, considering the fact that basically this fire was contained to the roof. They obviously have to go in there, and whatever mop-up they have to do, they will obviously be able to put that fire out underneath that roof. But the contents, to the extent that they're salvageable, will be salvaged, and the extent to which this could have been so much worse had this roof caved in, obviously is a success story as well, guys.
All right, Chris Christie in Air 7, thank you for your reporting from the scene. That is it for us here on Eyewitness News at 5. Eyewitness News at 6 is next.